Chapter 4:14. Everyone's expressions changed at the man's words. They put down the wine that was about to enter their mouths. Lu Qingfeng's face darkened. You came to me for protection, and I didn't turn you down for Zhang Chao's sake. It's fine if you don't accept my good intentions, but now you're even saying that I poisoned the wine. It's so disappointing. Sun Zhangchao stood up and shouted at the man, Wang Shuangdong, what is the meaning of this? You were the one who made all sorts of excuses when I went to Uncle Master for help. Now you're slandering him. What are you trying to do? Wang Shuangdong stood up and snorted. What am I trying to do? I'd like to ask you, Sun Zhangchao, what are you trying to do? You all know who I am. I come from a poor family. My master is Du Buzhou, the poison master. Most of the poisons in the northern Yen come from my master. The poison in this wine is my master's secret recipe, the 3-flower powder. After consuming it, one's internal energy will gradually dissipate within 3 breaths. Within 3/4 of an hour, one will temporarily become a cripple. But what the northern Yen people don't know is that my master stopped making this poison several years ago. All the 3-flower powder that's circulating in the northern Yen Jianghu is made by me. I'm just selling it under my master's name. I can't recognize other poisons, but I can recognize the poison that I made myself. If you don't believe me, take a sip. I have the antidote here. But I don't understand, Sun Zhangchao, why did you betray Brother Liu? Back then, you insisted on wiping out some mountain bandits, but you were used by them. You were almost chopped into meat paste by them. It was Brother Liu who saved you. But now you've done something like this. Can you face your own conscience? I, Wang Shuangdong, kill people and practice poison. My master and I are not good people, but at least I know what loyalty is. Even if I can't help Brother Liu, I wouldn't deliberately frame him. Sun Zhangchao's face turned pale. He shouted with grief and indignation, I didn't. Why would I betray Brother Liu? Then, Sun Zhangchao turned to Lu Qingfeng and asked in disbelief, Martial uncle, is the wine really poisoned? Lu Qingfeng's expression became extremely calm. He put down the cup and said, You've been discovered? I didn't expect Lu Fengxian to have Du Buzhou's disciple by your side. If I had known earlier, I would have changed the poison. Sun Zhangchao's body swayed. His eyes were filled with anger as he questioned, Why? Why are you doing this, martial uncle? If you don't want to help us, just say so. Why do you want to harm us? You are my martial uncle. Lu Qingfeng sneered, Martial uncle? I don't want to be the martial uncle of a trash like you. Sun Zhangchao stared at Lu Qingfeng in disbelief. Was this the same uncle master he knew, who was kind and generous, who would ask him about his cultivation and give him a lot of cultivation resources every time they met? Lu Qingfeng continued with a sneer, Do you think I'm willing to celebrate that old bastard's birthday every year and give gifts to that useless master of yours? It's all because that old bastard, Feng Yuan, hid something from me. He should have 8 of the Qishan 7 ultimate. The real 8th ultimate is his trump card, but he didn't teach it to me. He even said that my mind was unstable and I couldn't master his 8th ultimate, so he wanted to give it to that useless master of yours before he died. I've already reached the 5 cheese collecting in origin state and I'm stronger than that old bastard at his peak. What kind of martial arts can I master? How could a master who's only at the physical invulnerability state be able to master it? That old fart was just biased. I was planning to pretend to be courteous and wait for that old bastard to die before I get the martial arts from your useless master. I didn't expect you to give me such a big gift so soon. You probably don't know that after you dared to kill Meng Yuanlong, the Morgue village has issued a warrant for your arrest. Even the entire Morgue village has been mobilized to hunt you down. Even Nie Renlong has left the Morgue village. The Morgue village is very generous and the reward on the warrant is not small. I won't be thinking about that old bastard's martial arts anymore after I send you all to the Morgue village. In the end, Lu Qingfeng said leisurely, I advise you to surrender. I've already informed the people from the righteous manor. If you surrender now, you'll suffer less. What's wrong with that? Now everyone understood that it wasn't that Sun Zhangqiao had betrayed them, but that Lu Qingfeng was too vicious. He had pretended to be a filial son for so many years just for a martial arts manual. His acting skills were good enough. At least no one could tell that something was wrong. Of course, this was also because among the people present, Lu Fengxian was too gullible and the others were also young martial artists with little experience. If it were Chu Xiu, if Lu Qingfeng dared to show off his acting skills in front of him, Chu Xiu would let Lu Qingfeng know what a best actor was. Lu Fengxian raised the long halberd in her hand. The people who followed Lu Fengxian were also ready to fight. Lu Qingfeng shook his head. Stubborn. As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his hand and a large group of martial artists from Green Peak Villa rushed into the hall. They were armed with weapons and were full of killing intent. Obviously, they were ready. With halberd in her hand, Lu Fengxian shouted, "Follow me." As soon as she finished speaking, Lu Fengxian charged at Lu Qingfeng with the long halberd in her hand. Seeing Lu Fengxian's action, Lu Qingfeng couldn't help but sneer. Lu Fengxian was indeed terrifying to be able to kill a martial artist at the Unity of Heaven and Man stage at the Five Qis origin stage. At least, Lu Qingfeng had never seen such a powerful young man. However, Lu Fengxian did pay a price for killing Meng Yuanlong. At the very least, he was seriously injured. Otherwise, he wouldn't be in such a hurry to find a place to recover. Lu Qingfeng wasn't confident that he could defeat LV Fengxian when she was at her peak, but he was confident that he could defeat her now that she was seriously injured. Therefore, when he saw Lu Fengxian slashing with the long halberd, Lu Qingfeng didn't have the slightest vigilance and was ready to draw his sword casually. But just as Lu Fengxian's halberd slashed out halfway, a glaring red light suddenly erupted from the halberd. It was like a blood-red rainbow, and its power was extremely powerful, as if it could tear apart the heavens and the earth. An ear-piercing sonic boom suddenly erupted. As the halberd fell, the red moon dyed the entire hall red. Lu Qingfeng and his sword were cut in half by Lu Fengxian's halberd. Instant kill. Before the martial artists from Green Peak Villa could make a move, they saw such a terrifying scene. Their manor lord couldn't even withstand a single blow from that young man and was instantly killed. Perhaps even Lu Qingfeng himself didn't expect this to happen. A moment ago, he was still dreaming of capturing Lu Fengxian to claim the bounty, but the next moment, he was already dead. He didn't even have the mood to regret it. In the Jianghu, Lu Fengxian wasn't as famous as Chu Xiu and Nie Donglu, but Lu Fengxian was also as strong as the top 10 experts on the Longhu list. Perhaps after this battle, Lu Fengxian could be ranked in the top 10 of the Longhu list with a peace of mind. Lifting her halberd, Lu Fengxian said calmly, "Let's go." As Lu Fengxian took a step forward, the martial artists from Green Peak Villa who had surrounded them dispersed like a tide. To them, the handsome young man in front of them was as terrifying as a demon. By the time they walked out of Green Peak Villa, they were already some distance away. Just as they were about to say something excitedly, they saw Lu Fengxian's pale face turn from white to red, but it was an abnormal red. The next moment, Lu Fengxian spat out a mouthful of blood. Her face turned even paler. "Brother Lu. Brother Lu." Lu Fengxian waved her hand and said weakly, "I'm fine. The people from the righteous manor are on their way. Let's go, or it'll be too late." Sun Zhangqiao's face darkened. He said with shame, "Brother Lu, it's all my fault. If it weren't for me, you wouldn't have been injured." Lu Fengxian shook her head. "You don't have to be like this. I know you're doing this for my own good." On the side, Wang Shuangdong pushed Sun Zhangqiao away and said in a bad mood, "Get out of the way. I know you're innocent. No one is blaming you. Don't be a hindrance here." Taking out a few dawn, Wang Shuangdong gave them to Lu Fengxian and said, "Brother Lu, this is my master's secret dawn. Quickly take it. It can temporarily suppress your injuries." Someone on the side teased, "Wang Shuangdong, this is your master's dawn. Can you eat it?" Wang Shuangdong said in a bad mood, "Although my master is a poison master, he is only good at concocting poisons. He is also a pharmacist. Of course, he can also refine healing medicines. If you talk nonsense again, I will put aphrodisiac in your food. Everyone present laughed out loud. They knew that Wang Shuangdong would never betray them, because if Wang Shuangdong was disloyal, he wouldn't have warned them just now. Under the poison of the wine, they would all lose their lives. Tears welled up in Sun Zhangqiao's eyes. Although he had been betrayed by his uncle master, he still had so many brothers. At this moment, a mocking voice suddenly sounded, "What a deep brotherly bond. LV Fengxian, I really didn't expect you to be able to kill Lu Qingfeng after killing Supervisor Meng. With such strength, you can be ranked in the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard. But it's a pity that you've killed my people. If I let you escape from Northern Yan, where would I put my face?" As the voice faded, dozens of martial artists quickly surrounded Lu Fengxian and the others from the Dark Night. In the middle of the group was a tall, bearded middle-aged man, holding a ferocious-looking blood-red beheading knife. An expert from the Morgue village, Blood Ghost Blade Han Fang. An expert at the unity of heaven and human stage. Chapter 4:15. Blood Ghost Blade Han Fang wasn't as strong as Meng Yuanlong. Meng Yuanlong was the guest chamberlain and Nie Renlong's sworn brother. Whether it was power or strength, he was stronger than Han Fang. If Lu Fengxian could kill Meng Yuanlong, she could also kill Han Fang. Unfortunately, Lu Fengxian was already seriously injured. Han Fang, who was at the unity of heaven and man realm, was a more terrifying threat to Lu Fengxian than Meng Yuanlong at his peak. In the night, the blood-colored beheading blade in Han Fang's hand shone with a demonic red light. The corners of his mouth also revealed a hint of a sinister smile. In fact, Han Fang should be thanking LV Fengxian. Meng Yuanlong had always suppressed him in the guest chamberlain, so he never had the chance to stand out. In terms of relationship, Meng Yuanlong was the Villa Master's sworn brother. In terms of strength, he had sparred with Meng Yuanlong countless times, but he had never won even once. Therefore, as long as Meng Yuanlong was alive, it would never be his turn to be the guest chamberlain. But now that Meng Yuanlong was dead, it was his turn to take the position. Therefore, in a way, he had to thank Lu Fengxian. But gratitude was just gratitude. He still had to kill Lu Fengxian. After killing Lu Fengxian, he would bring the credit back to the guest chamberlain to receive the reward. Only then would his position as the new guest chamberlain be justified. Therefore, Han Fang didn't say anything and immediately led his men to attack. He was also afraid that things would change if he delayed. The sinister beheading blade brought with it a murderous red light and exploded with a powerful aura. "They're coming for me. I'll bring up the rear. You guys go first." With a loud shout, Lu Fengxian's halberd slashed down. The red energy was as resplendent as a blood moon. Although Lu Fengxian didn't know why Nie Donglu wanted to attack him, Lu Fengxian knew that Nie Donglu was targeting him. These people were all targeting him, and it had nothing to do with anyone else. These people were his best friends. Lu Fengxian already felt very guilty for getting involved in this matter because of him. Now that it was a critical moment, Lu Fengxian couldn't bear to see them die with him. Han Fang sneered and said, "Leave? None of you will be able to leave today." As soon as he finished speaking, Han Fang's beheading knife collided with Lu Fengxian's halberd. As the gang qi exploded, Han Fang immediately felt a huge force attack him. This caused him to uncontrollably take a few steps back, his eyes filled with shock. No wonder Lu Fengxian was able to kill Meng Yuanlong. Her strength was so great that it could be said to be terrifying. Even he felt that he wasn't a match for her when she was an entire realm higher. However, at this moment, Lu Fengxian suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was frighteningly pale. At this time, he was already an arrow at the end of its flight. Not to mention a great expert at the unity of heaven and man realm like Han Fang, even a weak 5 Chi's origin realm martial artist would probably be able to exhaust him to death. Han Fang couldn't help but laugh when he saw this. This credit was definitely going to be his. Wang Shuangdong and the others hurriedly gathered around and shouted anxiously, "Big brother Lu." Although Lu Fengxian had asked them to leave, none of them left. With Lu Fengxian's personality in the past, he had made many friends in the West Yan region. There were people from all walks of life, righteous, evil, and itinerant martial artists. Moreover, he had also made many good friends when he returned to the northern Yan region. Now that something had happened to him, naturally, not everyone had the courage to follow Lu Fengxian and resist the pursuit of the martyr village for the sake of loyalty. So, in fact, there were many people who had left. But now, those who stayed were loyal and were willing to accompany Lu Fengxian to die. They didn't leave in the past, and now they would not leave. Looking at these people present, Han Feng couldn't help but shake his head and sneered, "You are all loyal. That's good. This time, I will kill all of you in one fell swoop. It can be considered as fulfilling your loyalty." With that, Han Feng directly waved his hand, and the martyr village martial artists immediately prepared to rush over. He also slashed his saber at Lu Fengxian again. The beheading saber on the saber extended for more than 10 feet, and the ferocious blood chi on it soared into the sky. Its power was incomparably terrifying. Just as Lu Fengxian was about to erupt the last of his strength to fight for his life, and Wang Shuangdong and the others were also ready to follow Lu Fengxian to die, an even more powerful devil chi saber light fell from the sky. The saber light's devil chi soared into the sky, and when the saber slashed out, it seemed as if there were ghosts and gods crying. The surging devil chi seemed to slash out from hell, and among the evil, there was a trace of majestic divinity. The two sabers collided, and Han Feng's blood-red saber light suddenly shattered. His whole body was directly slashed by the saber, and he could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this saber, Lu Fengxian's eyes suddenly lit up, and a voice came from behind him, "Sorry brother Lu, I came a little late." Dressed in black, Chu Xiu walked out of the night, the heavenly demon dance in his hand surging with terrifying devil chi, but in the eyes of Wang Shuangdong and the others, they did not feel afraid. Instead, they felt hope. Lu Fengxian knew that Chu Xiu would definitely come to save him when he received the news, so Lu Fengxian was not surprised. He just smiled and said, "You're not too late, just in time." At this moment, Wang Shuangdong and the others also looked at Chu Xiu with a strange look in their eyes. They did not know who Chu Xiu was, but they had heard Chu Xiu's name many times from Lu Fengxian. In terms of fame, Chu Xiu was an independent cultivator from the northern Yan, and he was able to climb step by step to the 6th place on the Longhu list, and even sit in the position of the Guanxi penal officer. To most people, this was like a legend. Of course, this was only hearsay. For those who had not come into contact with Chu Xiu, they did not think much of it. However, they were aware of Lu Fengxian's strength, and these people admired Lu Fengxian's character. They could accompany Lu Fengxian until now because of their loyalty and because of Lu Fengxian's character. At the same time, they also admired Lu Fengxian's strength, which was definitely at the level of the top 10 on the Longhu list. In the end, Chu Xiu's attack had shocked them. As a 5-Chi's unification realm expert, Chu Xiu had actually seriously injured Han Feng with one slash, causing him to vomit blood. The strength of the two seemed to have been reversed. It was as if Han Feng was at the 5-Chi's unification realm, while Chu Xiu was at the unity of heaven and man. One had to know that although Lu Fengxian had killed Meng Yuanlong, they themselves had been seriously injured. They did not have it as easy as Chu Xiu. Of course, with the eyesight of these people, they could not see the direct difference between Meng Yuanlong and Han Feng. In any case, to them, whether it was Meng Yuanlong or Han Feng, they were both great experts at the unity of heaven and man realm. In any case, they were very, very strong. Looking at Han Feng, Chu Xiu's eyes revealed a touch of coldness. He waved his hand, and Tang Ye and the others surrounded him, their killing intent soaring. Although there were only a few dozen people, which was not as many as the people at the memorial hall, their aura and killing intent were stronger than the other parties. These people that Chu Xiu brought were all killers from the Blue Dragon Society in the past, and they were not easy to deal with. After joining Chu Xiu, these killers from the Blue Dragon Society did not have to busy themselves with missions and killing people every day. Instead, they had enough time to cultivate and improve their cultivation. Therefore, these people's strength and realm had improved a step. Among these people that Chu Xiu brought, the weakest among them had the cultivation of the inner aura realm. You people from the Memorial Hall are getting more and more shameless now. You can even do such a thing in broad daylight to frame others. With this kind of conduct, you have the nerve to call it a memorial hall? I have not seen true loyalty, but I have seen a lot of dirty and dishonest people. Han Fang looked at Chu Xiu and the surrounding warriors from the Guanzhong torture room. He coldly snorted and said, "The Guanzhong torture room still dares to meddle in the affairs of my memorial hall. You really think you are a piece of cake?" Although Han Fang said so, he still had no confidence in facing Chu Xiu. He was indeed at the unity of heaven and man realm, but it was precisely because of this strength that he knew how terrifying Chu Xiu, who was ranked in the top 10 of the Lone Hu list, was. There were more than 1 or 2 warriors at the unity of heaven and man realm who died at the hands of Chu Xiu. In the exchange of blows just now, the demonic chi entered his body and he was slightly injured. If they really fought, he did not know how many moves he could withstand from Chu Xiu. Just as Han Fang was about to think of a plan to temporarily retreat, but he could not completely let Lu Fengxian and the others go, and was preparing to delay until Nie Renlong and his men arrived, Chu Xiu was in no mood to talk nonsense with them. He directly waved his hand and said coldly, "Kill." In the past, he was chased out of the northern Yen by the people from the Memorial Hall. Now, the hatred between him and Nie Donglu was even more irreconcilable. Since this was the case, what was the point of talking nonsense? Just make a move and kill. As Chu Xiu's voice fell, Tang Ye and the others immediately rushed over with their men. Chu Xiu also slashed out with his saber, and a surging demonic chi soared into the sky. The Avicii Dao's 3 saber strikes combined into one, and the saber intent that could be said to be condensed to the extreme fell down. Chu Xiu's saber blocked with his saber. The first strike caused him to vomit blood, the second strike caused him to retreat, and by the third strike, the beheading saber in Han Fang's hand had been completely shattered by Chu Xiu's heavenly demon dance. Before, Han Fang was still thinking about how many moves he could withstand from Chu Xiu. Now, the result was clear. The answer was only 3 moves. Han Fang was in such a difficult situation, and the other martial artists from the Memorial Hall were not much better. The martial artists from the Memorial Hall were not weak. Although most of the martial artists who were accepted by the Memorial Hall were rogue cultivators, they were also elites among rogue cultivators. However, the assassins from the Blue Dragon Society were different. They were the true cream of the crop. They practiced killing methods, and their strength was naturally higher than that of the people from the Memorial Hall. Just as the Memorial Hall was in danger, a dignified shout suddenly came from afar, "Stop!" Han Fang, who had already vomited blood due to Chu Xiu's slashes, had a glimmer of light in his eyes. Chu Xiu's eyes narrowed. Not only did he not stop, but he also formed a seal with one hand, and the surging demonic chi surged towards Han Fang, stimulating his internal injuries. This caused his already injured internal organs to continuously bleed, and the demonic chi was extracted by Chu Xiu. In an instant, his eyes revealed a trace of fear, and the blood in his body seemed to be out of control, crazily rushing towards Chu Xiu. This was the secret demonic art of the Kunlun devil cult, the great demonic blood technique. Chapter 4:16. With the power of the Kunlun devil cult in the past, none of the secret techniques of the Kunlun devil cult's direct descendants were weak. The great demonic blood technique had even been sealed by the people of the Sword Hut, so one could imagine its true power. Using powerful demonic chi to stimulate the blood in the opponent's body was an extremely evil method. If the opponent was injured, then the great demonic blood technique's power would multiply and worsen the injury. No wonder Han Tingyi of the Sword Hut didn't want to give it to Chu Xiu. Even in the demonic path, the evil of this demonic technique was enough to rank among the top. At this time, the voice in the distance saw that Chu Xiu still hadn't stopped. he couldn't help but roar angrily again. A powerful gust of stellar energy attacked, and in an instant, the wind howled and rang through the sky. But at this time, the qi that Chu Xiu had absorbed with the great demonic blood technique was not absorbed by Chu Xiu's body. Instead, it condensed into a long, blood-colored knife that was completely made of blood and slashed at Han Fang. Han Fang roared angrily. All the stellar energy in his body condensed into a point, wanting to block the knife. But the strangest thing was that the long, blood-colored knife completely ignored the defense of the stellar energy and directly pierced through Han Fang. After the long, blood-colored knife pierced through Han Fang's heart, it turned back into blood and sprinkled onto Han Fang's body, dyeing him red. This was the terror of the blood-dissipating knife. If this martial art technique was used with one's own blood, then it would be a killing move that risked one's life. The stronger one's blood was, the stronger the power of the blood-dissipating knife. But if this martial art technique was used with one's opponent's blood, then it could ignore any defense of the opponent's stellar energy. It was extremely strange. The blood drawn by the great demonic blood technique was originally of the same origin as the opponent. Now, even if it condensed into a knife, it was still a part of the opponent's body. Stellar energy could defend against the opponent's attack, but could it also defend against a part of one's own body? Therefore, the strangeness of the blood-killing divine saber could be said to be impossible to guard against. It should be said that when facing the blood-killing divine saber, one could only forcefully attack and destroy the blood-chi saber power instead of choosing to defend. When Han Fang was killed, the person who had spoken earlier was enraged to the extreme. A powerful palm print made of astral energy fell down like a mountain. It was so powerful that even the surrounding heaven and earth yuan qi was torn apart. In that instant, Chu Xiu already knew who the attacker was, so he immediately began to retreat. He retreated quickly. Although he could easily kill ordinary oneness of heaven and man martial artists now, the gap between him and a martial Dao master was still like heaven and earth. However, the area covered by that palm was simply too large. Furthermore, the power of that palm seemed to be able to control the universe, sealing off the surrounding space and causing the world's origin energy to become incomparably viscous. Almost without looking at Chu Xiu, he knew that this was Nianlong's heaven and earth cloud hand, which held the universe in one hand and grasped the wind and clouds. There was no way to avoid it. Chu Xiu's eyes were red, and he instantly stepped into the state of selflessness. Demonic qi gang qi condensed around his body, and the power of blood intertwined with the demonic qi. The Avici Dao slashed out 3 times, and the demonic qi soared into the sky with a trace of majestic divinity. This slash was enough to severely injure ordinary oneness of heaven and man martial artists, but in the hands of a martial Dao master like Nianlong, it was easily extinguished by his heaven and earth cloud hand. Chu Xiu did not stop. His hand formed the wisdom fist seal, and in an instant, he released the aura domain, setting up an inescapable net to block this palm. However, the wisdom fist seal's aura domain that covered all directions did not even last for a breath's time before it shattered with a loud bang. Chu Xiu's expression did not change. Duguin was used, and in an instant, Chu Xiu's aura was as still as a mountain. Moreover, the characteristics of the inner force of the great Vajra divine powers were also displayed to the extreme, causing a layer of golden light to flicker around Chu Xiu. With a loud bang, the heaven and earth cloud hand fell, and the aura defense that Chu Xiu had set up by Duguin was directly shattered. His entire body was pressed into the ground, and he was blasted more than 10 feet away. Jumping out of the big pit underground, Chu Xiu's face was slightly pale, but he was not injured. Of course, this was not something to be proud of. This was Chu Xiu's first time facing a martial Dao master head-on. In the end, after one move, he had to use all his skills to block the other party's palm. One could imagine how powerful a martial Dao master, or rather, Nianlong himself, was. Over at the morgue, Nianlong walked over with a gloomy face. Behind him were Nie Donglu and a few experts from the morgue. Looking at Han Fang's corpse on the ground, Nianlong's face was so black that it could drip water. In fact, Nianlong had always been a person who did not show his emotions, but this time, their morgue had really suffered a great loss. Meng Yuanlong was his sworn brother, and also the head guest of his morgue. In fact, Nia Renlong really didn't care about the so-called sworn brothers. He had many brothers, both alive and dead. Nia Renlong only cared about the brothers that could bring him benefits, not the brothers that blocked his path. Meng Yuanlong was undoubtedly the latter. Meng Yuanlong was not weak in the first place, and more importantly, Meng Yuanlong was the head guest of the morgue. He had managed all the followers and guests of the morgue well for so many years. Now that Meng Yuanlong was dead, who could replace him in a short time? Moreover, Han Fang was also a well-known expert in their morgue, but this time, he died here. Losing two great experts at the unity of heaven and man realm in a row was already a serious blow to the morgue. Nia Renlong looked at Chu Xiu and looked him up and down. After a while, he spat out a sentence, "Chu Xiu, how dare you?" Nia Renlong knew his son's strength and temperament very well. This Chu Xiu was able to defeat Nia Donglu time and time again, and even suppress him. Nia Renlong had to admit that this person was indeed a character among the younger generation of the Jianghu. While Nia Renlong was looking at Chu Xiu was also looking at Nia Renlong, the martial arts master, without holding back. In terms of appearance, Nia Renlong had a square and masculine appearance. He wore a golden brocade robe and had a short beard on his chin. He had a righteous and awe-inspiring appearance. He stood there without saying anything, looking like a righteous and awe-inspiring senior master. However, one's appearance could not be used to judge a person. The theory that one's appearance was born from one's heart was somewhat reliable, but it was also inaccurate. In this Jianghu, there were very few true chivalrous people like Chu Kuanga, but there were many hypocrites. Nia Renlong was a hypocrite who disguised himself to the extreme and even thought of himself as a chivalrous person. In the past, there were 5 people in the memorial hall, but now only Nia Renlong was left. The descendants of the other people were nowhere to be found. These things could not stand up to scrutiny. However, over the years, the memorial hall had made a great name for itself in the northern Yan land. It helped the wandering martial artists who passed by without asking for anything in return, and it really helped a lot of people. However, who knew what Nia Renlong had done in the dark? Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and looked at Nia Renlong, then at Nia Donglu, and said lightly, "It's not that I'm brave, but that some people don't want me to live in peace. Nia Donglu, I gave you a chance to defeat me at the World Sword Sect Conference, but you didn't take it. You still only know how to play tricks in the dark. You can't beat me in a head-on fight, and even more so, you can't beat Brother Lu. A guy who only knows how to play tricks in the dark won't amount to much." Nia Donglu, of course, would not lose his composure because of Chu Xiu's sarcasm. Hearing that, he just smiled and said, "Chu Xiu, my memorial hall put out a warrant to arrest Lu Fengxian this time because of public indignation, and it has nothing to do with personal grievances. This person is insane." The Lu family treated him politely, but in the end, he annihilated the entire Lu family. This kind of thing happened in the northern Yan land, my memorial hall can't just ignore it. Chu Xiu sneered and said, "Brother Lu annihilated the entire Lu family? Ridiculous. Without any evidence, just based on your memorial hall's mouth, you dare to say such things? My Guanzhong torture room is the best at solving such cases. Do you dare to let my Guanzhong torture room intervene in this matter?" Nia Donglu said indifferently, "Don't forget one thing. Your Guanzhong torture room is only in charge of investigating cases, not in charge of trials. When you're needed, you're the constables of the Guanzhong torture room. When you're not needed, you're nothing. Your Guanzhong torture room has no right to intervene in northern Yan matters." Nia Renlong, who was at the side, waved his hand and said indifferently, "That's enough, Donglu. Don't talk nonsense with them, just do it." Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, "Villa Master Nia, you're a martial Dao master, but now you're openly attacking a junior martial artist like me. Isn't this a little too much? Aren't you afraid that people will say that you're bullying the weak? Also, if you dare to touch me, aren't you afraid that Guanzhong torture room will reprimand?" Nie Renlong stood with his hands behind his back and said indifferently, bullying the weak? I only captured a madman who dared to kill a disciple of my memorial hall. Who dares to say that I'm bullying the weak? As for Guanzhong torture room, if Chu Kuanga was still here, I would give some face to Master Chu. But Guan Siyu is not worthy of me giving him so much face. If you obediently stay in Guanzhong, naturally no one can touch you. But now you've jumped out of nowhere and killed a disciple of my memorial hall in northern Yen. You're courting death. Today, I'm going to attack you. I'd like to see if Guan Siyu dares to come to my memorial hall and demand an explanation. Nie Renlong was born in the wilderness. He had spent decades to build up the Morgue village. He had relied on both his methods and his strength. If he was facing Shen Baochen, Duguli, and other powerhouses at true fire spirit refinement, Nie Donglu might still care about their reputation and not dare to attack Chu Xiu. But now, he was only facing a Guanzhong torture room. To put it bluntly, Guan Siyu did not have enough face to make Nie Renlong give in. Lu Fengxian stood next to Chu Xiu and said with a somewhat solemn expression, Brother Chu, I seem to have implicated you. Previously, when Lu Fengxian asked for help from Chu Xiu, he did not expect that it would attract a martial Dao master like Nie Renlong. If he knew that, based on Lu Fengxian's character, he would rather force himself than ask for help from Chu Xiu. Chapter 4:17. To most martial artists in the underworld, a martial Dao master was an unreachable existence. LV Fengxian dared to go all out in the face of a martial artist at the oneness of heaven and man realm, and he also had the courage to go all out. However, they were now facing an expert at the martial Dao grandmaster level. Even with LV Fengxian's temperament, he could not help but feel a little desperate at this time. However, Chu Xiu was very calm at this moment, and he seemed to have nothing to fear. Just as Nie Renlong was about to make a move, a slightly old voice suddenly sounded. If Guan Siyu isn't worthy of your respect, then what about I? Everyone looked in the direction where the voice came from and saw an old man in a black robe with a black longsword hanging on his waist walking toward them. With a single step, he covered a distance of more than 10 feet. His aura was shocking, and it was clear that he was also a martial Dao master. Behind the old man was a young man in his 20s. Although he was only at the physical invulnerability stage, he had an extraordinary aura. It was obvious that he wasn't someone easy to deal with. Lu Fengxian was stunned. He looked at Chu Xiu and sent a voice transmission in confusion. Brother Chu, did you find him? Chu Xiu nodded and said, never overestimate your opponent's bottom line. The so-called not to bully the weak in the underworld is just a casual saying. In the face of absolute strength, even if you really bully the weak, what can others do to you? I guessed that Nie Renlong would make a move this time, so I made some preparations in advance. Now, it really came in handy. Lu Fengxian nodded, but she didn't know if he took it in. However, the others could tell that although official Chu and Lu Fengxian were good friends, the two of them had completely different personalities. Only God knew how they became friends. To put it nicely, Lu Fengxian's personality was carefree and casual. To put it bluntly, she was a little impulsive and pure. Even in the midst of escaping, LV Fengxian actually did not have any plans. She was completely relying on her own strength to forcefully kill her way out. Wherever she wanted to go, she would go. Although she looked valiant and powerful, there was no order to speak of. On the other hand, Chu Xiu's personality was very obvious. He would plan before taking action. In terms of using his brain, Chu Xiu was obviously better than Lu Fengxian. However, in the eyes of the crowd, Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian working together was a good idea. Chu Xiu would plan the overall situation, while Lu Fengxian would fight. The two of them could work well together. At this moment, Nie Renlong looked at the newcomer and frowned. He said in confusion, 9 abandonment sword, Xing Tianyao. What are you doing here? As far as I know, you have nothing to do with the Guanzhong torture room or Chu Xiu. The person in front of him was the Northern Yan's famous loose cultivator, 9 Abandonment Sword, Xianxia. Nie Renlong had long heard of his name, but he had not really interacted with him. However, if the other party was really a pure loose cultivator, Nie Renlong would not be afraid of him at all. No matter what, he was the leader of the Righteous Manor, one of the 6 gangs. Why would he be afraid of a loose cultivator? He did not even want to give face to Guan Xiu, let alone Xianxia. However, the crux of the problem was that Xianxia's background was not as simple as a loose cultivator. Xianxia was the Northern Yan's royal consecrator. He was the kind of consecrator who was loyal only to the Northern Yan royal family. Simply put, Xianxia was the Northern Yan royal family's hired thug. He was backed by the entire Northern Yan royal family. Nie Renlong could not care less about the Guanzhong torture room, but he could not ignore the Northern Yan royal family and the Northern Yan royal family. Since ancient times, the Jianghu and the royal family had always been at odds with each other. The people of the Jianghu did not want to be bound by the rules of the royal family, and the royal family did not want the people of the Jianghu to exist. Unfortunately, both sides could not do anything to each other. Therefore, the Jianghu and the royal family had reached a tacit agreement. As long as the sects in the Jianghu did not become too arrogant and did not challenge the authority of the royal family would not act against the people of the Jianghu. As long as the royal family did not want to completely eradicate the people of the Jianghu, most of the people of the Jianghu would abide by the rules and would not break them. Therefore, when the people of the Jianghu fought in the state capitals, they would deliberately control their strength. It did not matter if they broke something, but if they really hurt innocent people, it would be a violation of the rules and could easily cause the royal family to intervene. Although the royal family and the Jianghu were at odds, they also had areas where they could work together. For example, in the past, the Eastern Qi was extremely powerful. It occupied the rich lands of the Central Plains and had the momentum to conquer the mountains and rivers. It even fought against the Northern Yan and Western Chu at the same time. The Northern Yan was able to defeat the Eastern Qi and destroy the small country Wei kingdom that was attached to Eastern Qi, becoming the Northern Yan's Wei county. It was all thanks to the old emperor of the Northern Yan, Emperor Wu of Yan, Xianglong's unparalleled courage. He joined forces with the Northern Yan Jianghu to fight against the Eastern Qi and won the war. Therefore, since then, the Northern Yan could be said to be the country with the closest relationship with the people of the Jianghu among the 3 countries. Recruiting foreign officials had almost become an open rule. Xianxia was a member of the royal family, and he had been a member of the Northern Yan royal family for more than 10 years. He had a deep network of connections. In the Northern Yan, Xianxia was indeed more influential than Guan Xiu. Of course, this was only Xianxia's identity on the surface. According to the news from Mei Qinglian, Xianxia was a martial arts grandmaster of the Yinma clan and the only successor of the 9 Demon Sword sect, a great demonic sect in the past. Therefore, his identity was not only the 9 Abandonment Sword Xianxia, but also the 9 Demon Sword. Xianxia sneered. Although I have nothing to do with Chu Xiu, I have a relationship with the Guanzhong torture room. In the past, I was young and impetuous, and I offended someone I shouldn't have. If it wasn't for Chu Juxia, I wouldn't have the strength I have today. Now that the Guanzhong torture room's power has been stabilized, I can't find a chance to repay Chu Juxia's kindness. Now that I've finally found a chance, how can I ignore the young talents of the Guanzhong torture room? Nie Renlong, I know what kind of person you are. I also know about the *T things you did in the past. However, I didn't expect that you're getting worse and worse. You're actually bullying the weak in such a righteous and self-righteous manner. Anyway, with me here today, you can't touch a single person from the Guanzhong torture room. Nie Renlong frowned. He didn't expect that this matter would attract the old man Xianxia. Nie Renlong didn't doubt Xianxia's words. After all, when Chu Kuanga was roaming the Jianghu, there were too many martial artists who owed him favors, so many that they couldn't be counted. Even if only 1/10 of them remembered Chu Kuanga's kindness, it would still be a terrifying thing. Just like now, Nie Renlong had calculated everything, but he did not expect Xianxia to interfere. At this moment, the young man behind Xing Tianyao smiled and said, Villa Master Nya, where possible, one should forgive and forget. If you go too far, it won't look good for anyone, right? This young man was only in the physical invulnerability realm, but his tone carried a hint of superiority. Even when he was facing Nie Renlong, the villa master of the righteous manor, he was still like this. Nie Renlong frowned and said, Who are you? A martial artist in the physical invulnerability realm actually dared to speak to him in such a tone. Even if he used the dumbest method, he would know that the other party was either an idiot, or he was confident. The young man smiled and said, That's easy. My name is Xiang Chong. Villa Master Nya should have heard of my name. Nie Renlong's eyes narrowed. Of course he knew this name. He was the 13th prince of the current emperor, and also the most favored son of the emperor, the 13th prince, Xiang Chong. Although the northern Yan emperor Xianglong was old, his body was still healthy, and he had many descendants. The previous northern Yan crown prince died in an accident a few years ago. No one knew what Xianglong was thinking, but he never appointed another crown prince. This gave his descendants the opportunity to covet the throne. Right now, the 13th prince was a popular candidate for the position of crown prince. Although he was very young and did not have enough experience in the northern Yan court, Xiang Chang's only advantage was that he looked very similar to Xianglong when he was young, almost 90% similar. Therefore, he was also the one Xianglong doted on the most among all the princes. At this moment, Xiang Chong was standing on Xing Tianyao side and pressuring him. This prince probably wanted to rope in Xing Tianyao. After all, Xiang Chang's foundation in the imperial court was weak. Whether it was in the military, the civil officials, or the imperial court, he did not have much power. Therefore, it was not a bad idea to target the royal family. Nie Renlong could almost guess the cause and effect of these things at a glance, but he did not want to make an enemy of a prince. If he offended Xiang Chong, although he was not the crown prince, he still had all kinds of ways to make trouble for him. Although a prince could not influence the emperor's decision to destroy the morgue, he could at least cause some trouble for the morgue. But at this moment, a cold voice was heard. I say, 13th brother, you really have your hands in the pugilistic world. Aren't you afraid of being scolded by father? Don't be afraid, Heights Lord Nya. My 13th brother is just a fox borrowing the tiger's might. He does not have much power in the imperial court. Just because of father's favor, he let father deal with the morgue, one of the 6 gangs. Father is not that stupid. Another group of people came from afar. The leader was a young man in his 30s. He wore a golden robe and had a small mustache. He had an extraordinary aura. Behind him were a few eunuchs and a few maids. He was much more arrogant than Xiang Chong. This time, Nie Renlong did not need to hear the name to know that this person had a powerful background. He was the second prince, Xiang Li. Since ancient times, the imperial court had always respected the elders and not the juniors. With the crown prince dead, as the second prince, he had the greatest hope. Therefore, Xiang Li had many supporters in the imperial court. Other than not being favored by Xiang Chong, everyone else was stronger than Xiang Chong. Chapter 418. The 13th prince, Xiang Chong, and the second prince, Xiang Li, were also here. No one expected this, not even Chu Xiu. This was originally a grudge between him and the morgue. How did the two princes get involved? In fact, the reason why Xiang Chong was here was very simple. Xiang Chong wanted to rope in Xing Tianyao, but there was something fishy about Xing Tianyao's identity. How could he agree to Xiang Chong's request so easily? Therefore, Xing Tianyao did not directly agree or reject Xiang Chong's invitation. Instead, he pretended to be polite. This time, when Xiang Chong heard that Xing Tianyao was going to help, he hurried over to do Xing Tianyao a favor. He wanted to let Xing Tianyao see how courteous he was so that he could join him. Xiang Li's appearance here was even simpler. He heard about Xiang Chong's movements and came to cause trouble. There were so many princes in the northern Yan, but the crown prince was dead. As the second prince, Xiang Li's ability and background were not bad. Logically speaking, he should be the most popular successor to the crown prince's position. Even most of the power in the northern Yan court was inclined towards him. However, one must not forget that the northern Yan emperor, Xiang Long, was still alive. Among the emperors of the northern Yan dynasty, Xiang Long was not the founder of the country, but it was not an exaggeration to say that he was the leader of the resurgence. When Eastern Qi was at its strongest, Xiang Long joined forces with the northern Yan martial arts world and West Chu to resist Eastern Qi, forcibly breaking Eastern Qi's hegemony. This kind of achievement could be said to be unique among the emperors of the northern Yan. Therefore, in the northern Yan court, Xiang Long's prestige was absolute. If he did not express his opinion, then Xiang Li would be the most popular candidate to inherit the crown prince's position. However, as long as Xiang Long spoke up and wanted Xiang Chong to be the crown prince, no one in the northern Yan would dare to oppose him. So in these past few years, Xiang Li had spared no effort to suppress Xiang Chong, and he wanted to make sure that Xiang Chong didn't have the slightest chance to turn things around. As long as it was Xiang Chong's doing, he would destroy it and target it. Just like now, although he had nothing to do with the morgue, just because Xiang Chong was standing against it, he would stand on the side of the morgue. Xiang Chong looked at Xiang Li with anger in his eyes. Ever since he was young, he had always been suppressed by Xiang Li. In fact, Xiang Chong did not have much ambition in the beginning. He was ranked 13th, and with so many older brothers ahead of him, the position of crown prince would never fall to him. However, it was precisely because he resembled his father the most that he had been bullied and targeted by Xiang Li since he was young. As a result, Xiang Chong's mentality had also changed slightly after he grew up. Aren't you worried that I'll steal the position of crown prince? Fine, I originally didn't want this position, but since you're all afraid that I'll get it, then I'll really fight for this position. It was at this point that Xiang Chong began to prepare to fight for the position of crown prince. At the same time, he would have to face Xiang Li's even fiercer suppression. The anger on Xiang Chong's face disappeared as he looked at Xiang Li. He only smiled coldly and said, "Second brother, you've been paying a lot of attention to me. You've been following behind me all day like a shadow. Aren't you tired?" A trace of mockery appeared on Xiang Li's face as he said, "What, are you angry?" "To be honest, I haven't been paying too much attention to you. I have people by your side. Don't you believe that I'll have people report to me in detail what you eat at night and which woman you sleep with, not to mention where you go?" A look of shock appeared on Xiang Chong's face. However, he soon calmed down and only snorted coldly, "Useless provocation." Although Xiang Chong was young, he was no idiot. If he were to go back and investigate the people by his side with great fanfare because of Xiang Li's provocation, that would be very disappointing. Xiang Li said slowly, "Whether it's useful or not, you know it yourself." As he said this, Xiang Li turned his gaze to Nie Renlong and smiled, "Manor Lord Nie, the affairs of the Jianghu should be left to the Jianghu. The people of the imperial court will not easily interfere in the affairs of the Jianghu. Otherwise, they would be breaking the rules. Feel free to do what you want. The Northern Yan imperial court will not make things difficult for you, and no one will dare to." Nie Renlong's lips curled into a smile as he said, "Then I'll have to thank your highness." With Xiang Li's words, Nie Renlong no longer had to be afraid of the Northern Yan imperial court. Nie Renlong looked directly at Xing Tianyao and said in a low voice, "Xing Tianyao, this is my memorial hall's business. It has nothing to do with you. If you want to repay Chu Kuanga's kindness, there will be plenty of opportunities in the future. However, if you want to interfere in this matter, then don't blame me for not showing mercy." From Nie Renlong's point of view, Xing Tianyao only wanted to find an opportunity to repay Chu Kuanga's kindness. His target was only the Guanzhong torture room, not Chu Xiu. Now that he was going to take action with an unyielding attitude, Xing Tianyao would most likely give in and find another opportunity to repay the Guanzhong torture room. There was no need to fight to the death with the memorial hall. However, Nie Renlong did not know that Xing Tianyao's real target was not the Guanzhong torture room, but Chu Xiu. Xing Tianyao did not participate in the battle on Mount Fuyu because he was the Northern Yan Imperial Court's protector and had a mission at that time. He did not have enough time. However, Mr. Liu had sent someone to inform him of the details of the great battle between the righteous and demonic paths on floating Jade Mountain. His faction was also very close to the phaseless demon sect, so he naturally knew Chu Xiu's true identity. This was the most outstanding young talent of the Yinma branch. For this reason, Xing Tianyao had to protect Chu Xiu. Moreover, Mei Qinglian had also sent him a message to help Chu Xiu. Xing Tianyao would not give in so easily. Looking at Nie Renlong, Xing Tianyao said coldly, "Don't care about feelings? I didn't ask you to care about feelings today. If I watch the most outstanding disciple of the Guanzhong torture room's younger generation get hurt in front of me, how can I face Chu Juxia? Anyway, as long as I'm here today, your memorial hall can forget about touching Chu Xiu and the others." As soon as he finished speaking, Xing Tianyao had already unsheathed his long sword, and the cold light was terrifying. Nie Renlong frowned. Xing Tianyao's stubbornness was somewhat beyond his imagination. In the past, Nie Renlong had never dealt with Xing Tianyao, but he had heard of Xing Tianyao's reputation. In his impression, Xing Tianyao was also a rather slippery person. Today, for the sake of a dead person's kindness, he went against the memorial hall to the end. Was Chu Kuang's charm that great? Shaking his head, Nie Renlong sighed and also took a step forward. The aura around his body soared to the sky. In fact, Nie Renlong did not like to use this kind of forceful method to solve problems. For him, it was better not to make a move if he could. However, looking at the current situation, today's battle was inevitable. Although Nie Renlong did not like this kind of inexplicable fight, he was not afraid to fight with others. In the past, when the memorial hall was just built, the number of warriors who died under his hands was also not small. Xing Tianyao, since you're so stubborn, then don't blame me for not giving you face. Today, I'd like to see the power of your 9 abandonment sword, and what qualifications do you have to be recruited by the Northern Yan royal family? As soon as he finished speaking, Nie Renlong had already blasted out his palm. In mid-air, the powerful Gang Qi condensed into a huge palm print that was dozens of feet wide, and it fell down. Xing Tianyao's eyes revealed a touch of coldness. He unsheathed the black long sword in his hand. The scabbard was black, and the blade was also as black as ink. As he stabbed out with his sword, the surrounding night seemed to be integrated into his sword. The sword broke the dawn and tore the sky. The sword chi collided with the cloud-encompassing universe hand and a loud boom rang out. The powerful sword chi tore the cloud-encompassing universe hand apart. However, as Nie Renlong's hands continued to dance, the power of the world around him continued to swirl and condense, completely wrapping around Xing Tianyao. Xing Tianyao coldly snorted, and a black mist erupted from the body of his sword. When the sword was unsheathed, the faint howls of ghosts and gods could be heard. Countless sword chis burst out from the black mist, tearing apart the astral energy, and once again condensed into a huge astral sword that charged towards Nie Renlong. Xing Tianyao's true identity was the successor of the 9 demon sword sect, a major demonic sect. However, his luck was quite good. He had once accidentally obtained several ancient sword techniques, and after mastering them thoroughly, he finally condensed 9 powerful sword techniques with endless transformations. This was also the origin of his nickname, 9 Abandonment Sword. Therefore, even if Xing Tianyao did not use his trump card, the demon sword, he could still exert 90% of his strength. Nie Renlong held the heaven and earth in his hand, and a powerful force grabbed hold of Xing Tianyao's sword intent, melting it and tearing it apart. Waves of strange and unfathomable power shot toward Xing Tianyao along the trajectory of the sword intent, but Xing Tianyao immediately retreated. The sword in his hand turned into countless sword chis, and they attacked from all directions. The 2 martial Dao masters were locked in a stalemate, but the more they fought, the deeper Nie Renlong's frown became. As a famous figure in the Jianghu, Nie Renlong was confident in his strength. If he took out his trump card and went all out, he had a certain degree of confidence in defeating Xing Tianyao. However, the problem was that Xing Tianyao seemed to have gone mad. He actually went all out against him, as if he wanted to protect Chu Xiu even if he had to risk his life. Therefore, even if Nie Renlong went all out, he was not confident that he could escape unscathed when facing Xing Tianyao in this state. He was the leader of the morgue and the only martial Dao master in the entire morgue. If he was injured and needed to cultivate in seclusion for a period of time, there was no telling what would happen to the morgue. If the news were to spread, Nie Renlong could not guarantee that his enemies would not hit him when he was down. Therefore, Nie Renlong was also conflicted at the moment. Should he go all out and even pay the price of injury to get rid of Xing Tianyao, then kill Chu Xiu, or should he just give up? After a quarter of an hour of intense battle, Nie Renlong took the initiative to retreat more than 30 meters and said with a gloomy gaze, "Xing Tianyao, how much did Chu Kuanga owe you in the past? Is it worth it for you to risk your life for a junior martial artist in the Guanzhong torture room?" Chapter 419. Nie Renlong took the initiative to retreat. His attitude was clear. When Xing Tianyao heard Nie Renlong's question, he said expressionlessly, "Nie Renlong, you are too calculative. Of course, you won't understand this. Do you still want to continue fighting? I will accompany you to the end." Nie Renlong looked deeply at Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian, then waved his hand and said, "Let's go." The group of warriors from the morgue were somewhat unwilling. Their morgue had lost 2 unity of heaven and man experts to their opponent. How could they just let it go like this? However, even though they were indignant, Nie Donglu was even more indignant. Even though his father had personally taken action, Chu Xiu had managed to escape. This was simply illogical. However, Nie Donglu was much more rational than the other warriors in the morgue. He knew that the entire morgue was supported by his father alone. Meng Yuanlong could die, and so could Han Fang, but Nie Renlong could not be injured or harmed. No matter how much he wanted to kill Chu Xiu and eliminate this threat, he could not let his father take the risk. After Nie Renlong left, Xiang Li snorted coldly at Xiang Chong. He turned his gaze to Xing Tianyao and said with a gloomy expression, "Senior Sheng, those who are involved in the struggle for the royal family, once they choose the wrong side, will have a miserable ending. I hope that Senior Sheng will think it over carefully before making a decision." Xing Tianyao said indifferently, "I don't need the second prince to worry about this." Xiang Li snorted coldly. In any case, in his opinion, Xing Tianyao was already on Xiang Chang's side. After everyone left, Chu Xiu cupped his hands at Xing Tianyao and said, "Thank you, Senior Sheng, for saving me." Chu Xiu is very grateful. Xing Tianyao gave Chu Xiu a look and said with a smile, "In the past, I received great kindness from Chu Juxia. Now that I finally have the chance to repay this kindness, this small matter is not worth mentioning." Chu Xiu said solemnly, "Don't worry, Senior Sheng. When we return to the Guanzhong torture room, I will tell Hall Master Guan everything that happened here. I will never forget Senior Sheng's help." Chu Xiu and Xing Tianyao were talking politely with a straight face, but in fact, only they knew the meaning behind their words. Xing Tianyao meant that he was ordered by Mei Qinglian to save Chu Xiu. They were all from the Yinhua clan, so it was not worth mentioning. What Chu Xiu meant was that he would tell Mei Qinglian everything after he returned. He would never forget this favor of helping him. Of course, in the eyes of outsiders, Chu Xiu was just being polite to Xing Tianyao. It was not a big deal. At this time, Chu Xiu also turned his eyes to the 13th prince, Xiang Chong. He cupped his hands and said, "13th prince, thank you for speaking up for justice just now." Although Chu Xiu and the others knew that Xiang Chong helped Chu Xiu mostly because of Xing Tianyao, he was indeed on Chu Xiu's side. Naturally, Chu Xiu had to express his gratitude. Xiang Chong laughed and said, "Official Chu, you are too polite. In fact, I do not like the behavior of the memorial hall. However, as a prince, I cannot express my opinion on some matters in the Jianghu." Speaking of this, Xiang Chong suddenly said to Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian, "Official Chu, and young hero Lu, both of you are rare young talents in the Jianghu. Have you ever considered changing places? Official Chu, although you are now the Guanxi penal officer of the Guangzhong torture room and may even take over the position of hall master in the future, as far as I know, Hall Master Guan of the torture hall is not very old. As long as he is still in power, you can't ignore him. If you come under my command, I promise to find you a position in the imperial court that is worthy of your identity. What do you think? And young hero Lu, with all due respect, although you have survived this time, the memorial hall has a lot of connections in northern Yen. As long as you are in northern Yen, you will be in danger. If you come under my command, I can guarantee that the memorial hall will not dare to touch you. You will even be in charge of all the martial artists and foreign officials under my command. Although I, Xiang Chong, am born in the royal family, the people I admire the most are young talents like Official Chu and young hero Lu, who are free to repay favors and take revenge. I am used to being straightforward. In the past, Nye Dong Lu wanted to be friends with me, but I was too lazy to talk to him. It is too tiring to deal with such scheming people. So I will be straightforward. If the two of you can help me ascend the throne, there will be a place for both of you in northern Yen in the future. Of course, if the two of you don't agree, you can just treat it as a pipe dream. After all, among the many children of my father, I am the weakest one, although I am the most favored one. Xiang Chong was blatantly soliciting Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian. There was no probing. It was very simple and direct. With Chu Xiu's identity and status, even Xiang Chong was embarrassed to ask Chu Xiu to listen to his orders. So he directly promised Chu Xiu an official position in the Northern Yen Imperial Court. Although Lu Fengxian was not as famous as Chu Xiu in Jianghu, Lu Fengxian's killing of Meng Yuanlong was enough for him to be in the top 10 of the Longhu list. Xiang Chong said that he would give all his power to Lu Fengxian. This was also a sign of his trust in Lu Fengxian. Moreover, based on Lu Fengxian's performance while he was being hunted, Lu Fengxian was also worthy of this position. Xiang Chong believed that as long as Lu Fengxian was willing to serve under him, Lu Fengxian would definitely not betray him. Xiang Chong looked at Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian with a sincere gaze. His attitude was very sincere. In fact, Chu Xiu could also see that Xiang Chong was really different from the other princes. Although he was from the royal family, his personality was straightforward and heroic. He did not put on airs and even referred to himself as I, instead of this prince. When Xiang Chong was born, his title was Prince Xian. This title was not good, but it was not bad either. But when Xiang Chong was in his teens, his appearance became more and more similar to his father, Xiang Long, when he was young. He received more and more favor. In the end, Xiang Long even personally conferred him the title of Prince Yen. His fief was in Yanshan County, which was next to the capital of northern Yen. It could be said that he was extremely favored. Of course, Xiang Chong's current personality might also be related to his childhood experiences. After all, in the beginning, Xiang Long did not pay much attention to Xiang Chong. As the 13th prince, he naturally did not have any chance to ascend to the throne. Therefore, from the moment he was born, the people around him taught Xiang Chong the way they would teach an idle prince. No one taught him the skills of an emperor, such as scheming and scheming. Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian looked at each other and shook their heads at the same time. Chu Xiu took the lead and said, "In the past, when I betrayed the Blue Dragon Society, I was hunted down by the assassins of the Blue Dragon Society like a stray dog. It was the Guangzhong torture room who took me in at a critical moment. Therefore, I can only disappoint your Highness's good intentions." Lu Fengxian also shook her head and said, "Your Highness, many people know my personality. I'm used to being free and unfettered, and I don't like to be restrained by others. Brother Chu has been a torturer in Guangzhong for so long, but I have never chosen to seek refuge with Brother Chu. In the past, Heaven Alliance's alliance leader Chen also asked me to join the Heaven Alliance, but I rejected him. It's not that your Highness did anything wrong, but I, Lu Fengxian, have always been a wanderer. It's not time for me to settle down. Hearing Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian say this, Xiang Chong's expression was a little gloomy. However, he still smiled and said, "It's nothing. It's within my expectations. As for the throne, it's my fortune to obtain it, and my fate to lose it. In fact, from the very beginning, I never wanted to seize the throne. However, as Imperial Father changed my title to Prince Yan, Xiangli and the others became fearful of me and began to suppress me. I couldn't take it anymore and prepared to make it real, seizing the throne for them to see." At this point, the corners of Xiang Chang's mouth suddenly curled into a self-deprecating smile. "Perhaps I really don't have the aura of a ruler. In the past few years, apart from Imperial Fathers doting on me, I have nothing. My subordinates are also very weak, so no one will come to seek refuge with me. Although Imperial Father dotes on me, he is a very rational person. He will never support me just because he dotes on me. In this aspect, he treats all his children equally." Originally, Chu Xiu didn't care about Xiang Chang's words. However, when he suddenly heard the words Prince Yan, Chu Xiu suddenly asked, "Your Highness, your title is Prince Yan?" Xiang Chong asked in surprise, "That's right. Don't you know, official Chu?" The corners of Chu Xiu's mouth curled into a smile. "I've been away for a long time, so I don't really care about some things in the Northern Yan. I really don't know about this. However, Your Highness, you don't have to worry about it. There are always ups and downs in life. I believe that your future will definitely not stop here." Xiang Chong forced a smile and said, "Thank you for your auspicious words, official Chu. I hope so." Chu Xiu didn't say anything, but what he said just now was true. When he first heard that Xiang Chong was the 13th prince, Chu Xiu didn't react. He thought that Xiang Chong was just an ordinary prince. However, when Xiang Chong said that he had been given the title of Prince Yan, Chu Xiu then remembered that in the original plot, the Northern Yan's inheritance war was also very exciting. In particular, His Majesty, Prince Yan, would shine in the future. Of course, Xiang Chong looked a little more miserable now. There was no one around him who could help him. Not to mention young talents like Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian, Xiang Chong even had to curry favor with a martial Dao master like Xing Tianyao, hoping to get his support. That's right. It was just support, not loyalty. With Xiang Chang's current wealth, he was not qualified to make a martial Dao master like Xing Tianyao swear loyalty to him. After the two sides chatted for a while, Chu Xiu and the others bid farewell to Xing Tianyao and the 13th prince. Chu Xiu still had something to say to Xing Tianyao, but Xiang Chong followed closely behind Xing Tianyao. As for the Yinhua clan, they could only talk about it in the future. Chapter 420. After parting ways with Xing Tianyao and the others, Chu Xiu brought Lu Fengxian back to the Guanzhong torture room. If they stayed any longer in the Northern Yan, they would be courting death. Lu Fengxian had killed Nia Yuanlong, and Chu Xiu had killed Han Fang. The two of them had thoroughly offended the memorial hall. This time, Nia Renlong only retreated because of Xing Tianyao's intervention. If it were any other time, Nia Renlong would not care about bullying the weak. He would kill Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian as soon as he had the chance. Lu Fengxian's injuries were not light. It took her nearly a month to recuperate in the Guanzhong torture room. Even her foundation was slightly damaged. Originally, after he killed Meng Yuanlong, he was already seriously injured. However, at that time, LV Fengxian could still easily recover. In the end, because he forcibly killed Lu Qingfeng while he was seriously injured, it caused LV Fengxian's injuries to worsen. This time, it was a little too serious. Even though Chu Xiu did not lack elixirs, it still caused LV Fengxian's foundation to be damaged. Luckily, it was not too serious. In the future, if Lu Fengxian found some miraculous elixirs, or if he made a breakthrough in his physique refining technique, causing his body to become stronger, this level of damage could be made up for. After her injuries were healed, Lu Fengxian cupped her hands to Chu Xiu and said, "Brother Chu, thank you very much. If it weren't for you, I'm afraid I would have to stay in the Northern Yan forever." Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, "There's no need to thank me. Besides, I was the one who caused this. Lu Fengxian asked curiously, oh? What do you mean? Chu Xiu recounted the grudge between him and Nie Donglu during the great battle between the righteous and demonic forces on Mount Fuyu before saying, Nie Donglu did not do anything to you even after you returned to Northern Yen for such a long time. But after the great battle on Mount Fuyu, he immediately began to frame you. Then, he quickly gathered his men to kill you. His actions were so coherent that anyone could understand what was going on. It's because he knows that you're my good friend and that you've displayed such great talent and strength that Nie Donglu wants to kill you and kill one of my helpers in advance. After hearing this, LV Fengxian could not help but sigh. She was still too inexperienced when it came to playing mind games with this group of people. Being chased all the way, LV Fengxian himself was confused. He didn't understand how he had suddenly become a killer who wanted to exterminate the Lu family and was being chased by the people of the righteous manor. Only now did Lu Fengxian realize that this was the reason. Lu Fengxian couldn't help but shake his head. When I was in the Northern Yen, I had a good impression of Nie Donglu. Even when we were chased out of Northern Yen by the Memorial Hall, it was only a conflict of interest. I didn't expect Nie Donglu to be so narrow-minded. He wanted to deal with you, Brother Chu, but now he's turned around and attacked me. This behavior is a bit too despicable and unbefitting of his identity. Chu Xiu said indifferently, for someone like Nie Donglu, reputation is just a fig leaf. As long as his goal is achieved, the process isn't important. Brother Lu, you've been in the Jianghu for so long, are you still not used to these things? Lu Fengxian smiled bitterly and shook his head. If people want to kill me, it's easy for me to kill them. But to be killed for such a strange reason, I still can't accept it. After complaining for a while, Lu Fengxian said to Chu Xiu, by the way, Brother Chu, do you still need people in the Guanzhong torture room? Chu Xiu was surprised. Why? You also want to join the Guanzhong torture room? If you are willing to join the Guanzhong punishment hall, I believe that Hall Master Guan will welcome you. After all, you are currently ranked in the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard. For a faction to have 2 young elites ranked in the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard, I believe that Hall Master Guan will welcome you. After killing Meng Yuanlong, Lu Fengxian was ranked 9th on the Longhu list. He was definitely a famous young talent in the Jianghu. If Guan Siyu didn't welcome such a person, then there would be a problem. Lu Fengxian shook his head and said, it's not me, it's my friends. They're all Northern Yen rogue cultivators, and they're not weak. I think they're qualified to join the Guanzhong torture room. The main thing is that they've already seriously offended the people of the morgue by helping me fend them off. I'm afraid they won't be able to return to the Northern Yen for the time being. This matter started because of me, so I'm going to help them find a way out for the time being. However, my connections are limited, so I can only trouble you, Brother Chu. Chu Xiu didn't even think about it and said, of course, no problem. I'll get someone to arrange it. The strength of Lu Fengxian's friends ranged from the inner invulnerability to the 3-flower realm. Although there were strong and weak ones, none of them were mediocre. Speaking of which, how many of those who were chosen by LV Fengxian and became friends with her were mediocre? They were only mediocre when compared to people like Lu Fengxian and Chu Xiu. Compared to most of the leading martial artists in the Jianghu, their strength was still considered very strong. Moreover, even if these people were really mediocre, based on the fact that they were willing to accompany LV Fengxian all the way and not abandon her, this group of people was worthy of being taken in as subordinates, because such people would not betray. Moreover, the strength of these people was not weak. There were people from all walks of life among them. For example, Wang Shuangdong was the direct disciple of Du Bujiu, a famous poison master in the Northern Yen. He was very skilled in alchemy and poison refining. After Lu Fengxian called Wang Shuangdong and the others over, he pointed at Chu Xiu and said, everyone, I've dragged you into this time. Now that I've offended the morgue, I'm afraid I can't stay in the Northern Yen any longer. The morgue will also take out their anger on you, and you won't be able to return to the Northern Yen for the time being. Therefore, I recommended you to Brother Chu. If you're willing to join the Guanzhong torture room, Brother Chu will definitely not let you down. If you're not willing, I'll find another way out for you. Wang Shuangdong and the others looked at each other, nodded and said, since Brother Lu said so, then we'll do as you said. Wang Shuangdong and the others did not trust Chu Xiu, but Lu Fengxian. They simply believed that Lu Fengxian would not harm them. Moreover, they had seen Chu Xiu's strength and prestige. He was a torture officer of the Guanxi region, and he was ranked 6th on the Longhu list. Following Chu Xiu was not a disgrace to them. Wang Shuangdong and the others cupped their hands at Chu Xiu and said, "Greetings, Official Chu." Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, "No need to be so courteous. You're all Brother Lu's good friends, so naturally, you're also my brothers. I dare not say that I can give you a bright future, but at least I won't disgrace you." Saying this, Chu Xiu called the Ghost Hand King and had him bring Wang Shuangdong and the others to make arrangements. After making arrangements, Lu Fengxian said, "Brother Chu, since everything is settled here, I'll prepare to go to West Chu." Chu Xiu said in doubt, "Your injuries are not completely healed, why are you going to West Chu? Your foundation is damaged, so it's best for you to rest and see if you can make up for it when you break through." Lu Fengxian said, "I'm going to West Chu to prepare to treat my damaged foundation. When I was in West Chu, I met the divine doctor Angry Yama Feng Buping. I helped him a little and divine Dr. Feng is good to me. As long as I need it, he will treat me first. Now that my foundation is damaged, others can't do anything, but divine Dr. Feng should be able to, so I want to give it a try." Hearing Lu Fengxian say this, Chu Xiu was a bit speechless. In fact, LV Fengxian's greatest advantage wasn't his potential, nor was it his looks, but his abnormal luck. Lu Fengxian's luck had always been good, this was something Chu Xiu knew. Looking at it now, it was indeed the case. Angry Yama Feng Buping had a great reputation in the Jianghu, he was known as the divine doctor of the Jianghu. He could cure all kinds of difficult and complicated illnesses. Even if you were half a step into the gates of hell, Feng Buping could pull you back, so his nickname was Angry Yama. But at the same time, although Feng Buping's medical skills were excellent, he was very greedy. To find him to cure a disease, for a normal martial artist, going bankrupt was considered light. Even if the disciples of the large sects came, they would have to bleed a lot. In the end, even if you wanted to bleed a lot for Feng Buping to cure you, Feng Buping might not have the time because there were too many people looking for him to cure. So at this time, he set a rule. Only those who he liked were qualified to bleed a lot, and those who he didn't like, even if they died, he wouldn't care. However, the more rules Feng Buping set, the more people looking for him to cure, as if he was really a divine doctor who could bring the dead back to life and grow flesh and bones. This kind of divine doctor that ordinary people couldn't even see once, but in the end, he had a friendship with Lu Fengxian, and even made a promise of this level. If this wasn't luck, then what was? Since it's like this, then I'll go. Brother Chu, if you're going to the memorial hall, don't forget to call me, I can make a move at any time. After chatting with Lu Fengxian for a while and escorting him out of the Guanzhong torture room, Chu Xiu was ready to go into seclusion again. However, before Chu Xiu was ready, someone sent a message, asking Chu Xiu to go to the Guanzhong torture room to see Mei Qinglian. Chu Xiu was a little surprised, this was the first time Mei Qinglian came to find him without informing him. In fact, when he returned to the Guanzhong torture room, Chu Xiu had already gone to see Guan Siyu and Mei Qinglian, and told Mei Qinglian about the Northern Yan incident. In the end, Mei Qinglian still thought that Chu Xiu talked too long, so she only asked for the result. However, in the end, Mei Qinglian suddenly sent someone to find him, looking very anxious, which made Chu Xiu a little confused. When Chu Xiu arrived at the headquarters of the torture hall, it was night. Before Chu Xiu could go to find Mei Qinglian had already turned into Devil Qi and appeared in front of Chu Xiu openly. This time, Mei Qinglian didn't tease Chu Xiu. She just looked at Chu Xiu with a serious expression and said coldly, "Who are you?" Chapter 421. Mei Qinglian's attitude made Chu Xiu's heart skip a beat. However, his face remained calm as he asked with a smile, I am who I am. Who else can I be? Mei Qinglian approached Chu Xiu step by step. A rich yet not cloying fragrance wafted towards him. It was only when Mei Qinglian's beautiful face was less than 3 fingers away from Chu Xiu that she stopped. However, at this moment, Chu Xiu did not feel the fragrance. Instead, he felt a strong pressure coming towards him. It was the pressure of a martial Dao grandmaster. Mei Qinglian said in a low voice, I always thought that I had seen through you, but now I realize that you haven't been telling me the truth from the beginning. Someone from the Yinma clan sent me a message saying that there's a rising star of the devil Dao in Eastern Qi. He uses authentic devil arts and claims to be a direct descendant of the Kunlun devil cult. He's the successor of Nangong Wuming, the hall master of the Devil Heart Hall. If he's the successor of Nangong Wuming, then who are you? Chu Xiu's heart trembled when he heard Mei Qinglian's words. However, he forced himself to maintain a calm expression on his face. In reality, a storm had already been set off in his heart. Chu Xiu was not afraid that someone would find out that he was the successor of the Kunlun devil cult. This was because Chu Xiu knew that the authentic successor of the Devil Heart Hall would only appear in a few years. When that time came, he would find a chance to kill him. Dead men tell no tales, and the fake would become the real thing. But now, for some unknown reason, Nangong Wuming's legacy had been obtained by someone else in advance. As such, there were now 2 Nangong Wuming successors in the martial world. Even an idiot would know that something was wrong with the situation. Looking at Mei Qinglian who was right in front of him, Chu Xiu knew that if he gave a wrong answer, the beautiful face in front of him would immediately turn murderous. Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, in Eastern Qi, I joined hands with Mr. Lu to defeat Prince Anil Jiang Wenyuan. In the great battle of the righteous and demonic paths on Mount Fuyu, I represented the Yinma clan to show our might. Everyone in the Yinma clan knows that I, Chu Xiu, am a direct descendant of the Kunlun devil cult. I was, and I will still be. As for that guy, he's just a nobody in the Jianghu. We can't just take whatever he says. Chu Xiu didn't answer whether his identity was real or not, but he believed that Mei Qinglian could understand what he meant. Regardless of whether Chu Xiu's identity was real or not, he had been wearing the identity of a direct descendant of the Kunlun devil cult for such a long time. Everyone in the Yinma clan thought that he, Chu Xiu, was a rising star of the demonic path, and the future hope of the Yinma clan. Mei Qinglian thought so, the phaseless demon sect thought so, and even Wei Shuya, who was an old monster of the demonic path, thought so. If Chu Xiu's identity was exposed at this time, it would be a huge blow to the Yinma clan. It would also make the Bright Demon clan laugh at them for being blind. Just like Chu Xiu said, since Chu Xiu had worn this identity for such a long time, as long as it was in the past and in the future, there wouldn't be a problem. Moreover, who was that guy who claimed to be the descendant of the Demon Heart Hall? He was just a nobody in the Jianghu. But he, Chu Xiu, was a young hero with an outstanding reputation in the Jianghu. He was ranked 6th on the Dragon and Tiger list, and was enough to represent the demonic path and compete with the righteous heroes. The difference in status between the two was already so obvious. Whether they wanted a nobody to be the future hope of the Yinma clan, or whether they wanted Chu Xiu, a young hero ranked 6th on the Dragon and Tiger list, to stand on their side, this kind of choice was very easy to make. At this time, what the truth was no longer important. What was important was whether it was true or false, which was in line with the interests of Mei Qinglian, or in line with the interests of the entire Yinma clan. After Chu Xiu finished speaking, Mei Qinglian's expression was a little uncertain. After a long time, she took a step back and coldly snorted, for the time being, only I know about this matter. The news should not have spread to the phaseless demon sect. You still have some time to clean your ass, otherwise, if things get out of hand, I won't be able to protect you. Also, remember this, I can tolerate this kind of thing once, but this is also the last time. After saying that, the black fog around Mei Qinglian's body flashed, and her figure disappeared from the room. Chu Xiu stood still, and after a long time, he sat back on the chair and let out a long breath. A layer of cold sweat had already appeared on his forehead. This time, Chu Xiu had indeed miscalculated, and it could be considered as giving Chu Xiu a profound lesson. The butterfly effect sounded simple, but it was the most unpredictable thing. Although he pretended to be the descendant of the Demon Heart Hall, it was only spread in a small area. The people who knew about it were only Mei Qinglian, Mr. Lu, and a few others. He simply could not figure out why the descendant of the Demon Heart Hall, who was supposed to appear in the Jianghu several years later, would appear so early. Just now, it could be said that Chu Xiu really had a trip to the gates of hell, and this was not fake at all. Usually, Mei Qinglian's attitude towards Chu Xiu was not bad, and she would occasionally flirt with Chu Xiu. She would also generously agree to Chu Xiu's request, but that was based on the premise that Chu Xiu was on her side. But in reality, Mei Qinglian was still a sinister and ruthless holy maiden of the Yinma clan, a martial arts master of the Yinma clan. If Mei Qinglian firmly believed that Chu Xiu was lying to her, Chu Xiu was not sure that he could escape from Mei Qinglian's hands. Not to say that he would definitely die, he would at least die 9 times out of 10. But fortunately, Mei Qinglian was still rational, and Chu Xiu had also shown his value during this period of time. To be precise, it should be his value in the Yinma clan, so that he could be able to persuade Mei Qinglian to turn the fake into the real. It could be said that he was somewhat lucky. After sitting in the same place for a long time, Chu Xiu lightly spat out 4 words, "Tread on thin ice." Chu Xiu's identity changed back and forth between the Orthodox Dao, the Devil Dao, and even the Yinma clan. It seemed that it was difficult to determine whether he was real or fake, but it was not invulnerable. At this time, what he needed to do was only 4 words, tread on thin ice. However, during this period of time, Chu Xiu's life was a little too smooth. He had killed all the people he wanted to kill, and got all the things he wanted. This also led to an uncontrollable arrogant and lazy mood in Chu Xiu. To put it simply, he, Chu Xiu, had become arrogant. This was a very terrible mood, unconsciously affecting Chu Xiu, and even he himself did not notice it. If this sudden incident had not completely awakened Chu Xiu, he was afraid that he would still be immersed in this mood. Maybe one day he would not be careful, and it would take his life. Chu Xiu was a human, not a god. As a human, he had all kinds of emotions, which affected his judgment and way of doing things. However, Chu Xiu had a rare advantage, which was that he knew his own limits and would examine himself. If he made a mistake, then he would find a way to make up for it. In the future, he would remember that he could not make the same mistake again. Thinking of this, Chu Xiu could not help but reveal a trace of coldness in his eyes. Now, what Chu Xiu had to do was to make up for the mistake he had made. In Mei Qinglian's words, Chu Xiu had to prepare to clean up his mess first, so that the matter would not become too big and be discovered by others. When the successor of the Demon Heart Hall suddenly appeared in Eastern Qi, Chu Xiu only sent someone to report to Guanxiu, then led his men to Eastern Qi. Apart from Yin Batong, the other penal officers did not have any objections to Chu Xiu going out all the time. Even if Yin Batong had any objections, it was useless. Chu Xiu had already arranged for the entire Guanxi region to be properly governed, so what could he say? Moreover, this time, Chu Xiu did not take this matter seriously. He directly brought the experts under him, Wang Shuangdong, and the others, who had just joined him, out, leaving only 30% of the people in the Guanxi region to maintain order. Eastern Qi was too big, so Chu Xiu did not know where the so-called successor of the Demon Heart Hall was. However, as long as one was in the Jianghu, it was very easy to find a person. There was someone who specialized in this kind of thing, and that was Wind's Sweeping Tower. In the past, when Chu Xiu was being chased by the Morale Manor and the Northern Floating Snow City, these two factions had borrowed the power of Wind's Sweeping Tower to investigate his whereabouts. At that time, it had indeed caused a lot of trouble for Chu Xiu, but Chu Xiu did not have any hatred for Wind's Sweeping Tower. Wind's Sweeping Tower was just a simple wind organization. If you came to buy information, they would sell it. Simply put, Wind's Sweeping Tower was just a tool. Even if Chu Xiu wanted to take revenge, he would only take revenge on the people holding the tool, not the tool itself. Wind's sweeping tower had countless branches in the Jianghu. There was a branch in both northern Yan and West Chu, and its headquarters was in Nanliang City in eastern Qi. There were two big cities in eastern Qi that were the most prosperous. One was naturally the capital, Great Liang City, and the other was the former capital, Nanliang City. Moving the capital was a very serious matter, but hundreds of years ago, the imperial family of eastern Qi seemed to have gone crazy. They had invited the Taoist masters from the Zhenwu cult, Chunyang Dao sect, and the Taoist master mansion of Longhu Mountain to check the geomancy of the imperial family of eastern Qi. In the end, they came to the conclusion that the geomancy of Nanliang City was not good, so they hurriedly moved the capital to Great Liang City. Putting aside whether the experts from the three major Taoist sects could see the geomancy, eastern Qi had been established in Nanliang City for such a long time, and now they said that the geomancy was not good. Who was the one who checked the geomancy when the capital was first built? In short, the people of eastern Qi had thought that the imperial family of eastern Qi was crazy. But since the capital had been moved, the people of eastern Qi had gotten used to it. As for the original capital, Nanliang City, it did not decline. It was still prosperous and could even be compared with Great Liang City. The headquarters of Wind's sweeping tower was located in Nanliang City. Every day, countless Jianghu information would be sent to Nanliang City in great detail. Even the vegetarian meal of the Great Guangming Temple today was recorded in the information. Of course, ordinary people would not buy such boring information. Chapter 422. In Nanliang City, Chu Xiu brought Tang Ye and Yan Bugui into the city and headed straight for the headquarters of Wind's sweeping building. Eastern Qi wasn't Chu Xiu's territory after all. He had brought a few hundred men with him. It would be fine if they were scattered, but it would be too conspicuous if they were to enter Nanliang City as a group. The headquarters of Wind's sweeping building was located in the south of Nanliang City. The people around it were mostly people of the pugilistic world. Of course, there were only two types of people. One was the anemophilia who sold information, and the other was the people of the pugilistic world who came to buy information. The headquarters of Wind's sweeping building was very magnificent. It was a 9-story building. In the pugilistic world, a 9-story building wasn't that tall. However, Wind's sweeping building's 9-story building was taller than a 10-story building. The space on each floor was frighteningly spacious. The entire building wasn't made of wood. It was made of a stone that looked like white jade. There were countless patterns of astrology and divination carved on it. It looked extremely profound. As soon as Chu Xiu stepped into Wind's sweeping building, a martial artist from Wind's sweeping building immediately noticed Chu Xiu. He paused for a moment before a bright smile appeared on his face. He walked over and said, "So it's Chu Xiu from Guangzhong torture room, Official Chu. What information would Official Chu like to buy? Please come upstairs." These disciples who welcomed guests in Wind's sweeping building were famous for being quick-witted. It was a basic skill for them to be able to recognize the appearance and identity of a martial artist on the dragon and tiger list within 10 breaths of time. Some of them could even determine one's background from one's strength, appearance, clothes, and habits of speech. It was very terrifying. The disciple led Chu Xiu to a guest room on the 6th floor. He asked respectfully, "May I ask what kind of information Official Chu would like to buy? Is it related to a sect or an individual?" "Official Chu, please don't worry. Although the people of Wind's sweeping building reveal the most secrets, they also have professional ethics. Those secrets were sold to us, not extracted from the mouths of our customers." Chu Xiu knocked on the table and said, "I am looking for information on a person, a small fry who has just made a name for himself in Eastern Qi. Everything about him and his exact location." The martial artist in charge of welcoming the guests nodded and said, "Please wait for a moment, Official Chu. I will bring someone over." With that, the martial artist who welcomed the guests pushed the door open and walked out. However, as soon as he walked out, he bumped into a middle-aged martial artist in his 50s dressed in black. The middle-aged martial artist had a squarish appearance, but there was a slender red mark between his eyebrows. It looked like a third eye and was extremely strange. Seeing that person, the welcoming martial artist hurriedly said, "Greetings, Lord Qi." This martial artist was none other than the Northern Yen Vice Pavilion Master of Wind's Sweeping Pavilion, the three-eyed god Qi Yuanli. He was the one who had stood up against the majority and arranged for Chu Xiu to be on the Longhu list. Qi Yuanli had been a little lazy when he was in Northern Yen, and he believed in the rule of non-interference. He did not expect that the Northern Yen branch of Wind's Sweeping Building would develop so well. Because of this, Qi Yuanli was promoted and transferred from the Northern Yen branch to the headquarters of Eastern Qi as the Vice Pavilion Master. Although his position did not change, he had been in the Northern Yen branch, and now he was in the headquarters of Eastern Qi. Qi Yuanli's power had risen by more than one level. Qi Yuanli nodded and asked subconsciously, since he was brought to the 6th floor, "Who is here to buy information?" Wind's Sweeping Building was also divided into levels. If you wanted to buy some general information, you could directly go to the lower 3 floors for public trading. The 4th, 5th, and 6th floors were only open to the big shots in Jianghu, and there were special guest rooms for guests to keep their secrets. The martial artist who welcomed the guests said, "It's Chu Xiu, the Guanzhong Torture Room's chief torture officer of Guanxi. He wants to find detailed information and information about a person." With Qi Yuanli's lazy personality, he had originally planned to ask and then leave, but he did not expect the person to be Chu Xiu. This suddenly piqued Qi Yuanli's interest, because he was the one who personally selected Chu Xiu to be on the Longhu list, and now Chu Xiu's growth had somewhat exceeded his expectations. In fact, when Qi Yuanli first listed Chu Xiu on the Longhu list, and very coincidentally, he was ranked above by Wuji from the Drifting Snow City in the far north. Part of the reason was to annoy the Drifting Snow City. After all, at that time, the Drifting Snow City in the far north was a little difficult for the Wind Sweeping Building to collect information. Qi Yuanli was actually a little narrow-minded, and the Wind Sweeping Building was not good at combat, so he could only slightly annoy the people from the Drifting Snow City in this aspect. After all, things like rankings could not be very strict. It was still acceptable to change the rankings, after all, there were some extremely famous big shots in it, but as for the Longhu list, as long as it was not too outrageous, it was only a matter of the Wind Sweeping Building moving their lips. Now that he knew that Chu Xiu happened to be in the Wind Sweeping Building, Qi Yuanli was quite curious about him. He directly said to the martial artist who welcomed the guest, "All right, you don't have to worry about it, I will personally deal with this guest." Although the martial artist was a little puzzled as to why Qi Yuanli suddenly came to greet a guest today, he did not ask much and just nodded and left. Qi Yuanli pushed the door open and entered. When Chu Xiu looked up, he was immediately stunned. The person in front of him did not conceal his aura, and he was a martial Dao Grandmaster powerhouse. Was his status already so high that it was worthy for a martial Dao Grandmaster powerhouse to personally welcome him? Qi Yuanli smiled and said, "My name is Qi Yuanli, the deputy leader of the Wind Sweeping Building's Eastern Qi headquarters. Speaking of which, Chu and I are fated to meet. Back when you first entered the Longhu list, I was the deputy leader of the Northern Yen branch when I was personally nominated and recommended you." When Chu Xiu heard that, he immediately stood up and cupped his hands, saying, "So there's such a past. I have to thank Tower Leader Qi for supporting me back then, or I, Chu Xiu, would not have a reputation in the pugilistic world today." When Qi Yuanli heard that, he smiled and waved his hand, saying, Deputy. There's only one leader of the Wind Sweeping Building, and it's not me. Also, Chu, you don't have to be so humble. The sharpness of a sword won't always be hidden in its sheath. If you have the strength, we will recommend you to enter the Longhu list. On the contrary, if you don't have the strength, even if we let you enter the list, you won't be able to stay on the list for long. Therefore, everything that you have now, Chu, was fought for by yourself. We, the Wind Sweeping Building, will only ensure fairness. By the way, Chu, what information are you here to buy this time? Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "It's like this. Recently, someone in Eastern Qi has announced that he's the successor of the Kunlun Devil Cult's Demon Heart Hall. The battle between the righteous and demonic factions on floating Jade Mountain has just ended, and there's already someone jumping around like a clown. It's really despicable. Although the Guanzhong torture room isn't part of the righteous path, we don't want the underworld to be ruled by the demonic path. Therefore, we have to do our part to exterminate the demonic path. This time, I've brought people here to kill this evil clown. Qi Yuanli smiled. He had been in the wind-sweeping building for his entire life and was an experienced person. What had he not seen? It was very normal for people like Chu Xiu to find a dignified reason before doing something. Therefore, Qi Yuanli didn't expose him. Instead, he called for a warrior and asked him to bring the information over. A moment later, a warrior brought a jade book and handed it to Qi Yuanli. This jade book was really made of jade, and it was densely engraved with runes. There weren't many pages, only less than 10. As Qi Yuanli's mental strength seeped into the jade book, countless information immediately surged into his mind. There was too much information in the wind-sweeping building, so much so that some of the information couldn't be recorded with words. Therefore, the wind-sweeping building invented this jade book. Its principle was exactly the same as the Cultivation transmission jade slip, but the content it could contain was 100 or even 1,000 times more than the Cultivation transmission jade slip. However, this thing had a huge impact on one's mental strength. In the wind-sweeping building, only warriors who were one with heaven and man and above were qualified to use it. After a while, Qi Yuanli closed the jade book and said in a low voice, "I found the information you wanted. It's very interesting." The guy who claimed to be the successor of the demonic Heart Hall was called Zhang Chufan. He was a rogue warrior from the Liang County of Eastern Qi. He had the cultivation of the internal invulnerability realm and was once a follower of the Prince and Luo residence. However, after the Prince and Luo residence was exterminated by the Eastern Qi's royal family, Zhang Chufan escaped from the Prince and Luo residence. However, no one took him seriously. 2 months ago, this guy came out of nowhere and learned a powerful demonic art. He claimed to be the direct descendant of the Kunlun devil cult, but no one took him seriously. However, this guy's strength has definitely increased. As soon as he came out, he had the strength of the three-flower realm. He went to seek revenge on several enemies that he had grudges with in the past. He's a vengeful person. The latest news is that this kid is now looking for a backer. I heard that he contacted the people of the Evil Pole sect through some unknown channel. It seems that he's ready to join the Evil Pole sect. After listening to Qi Yuanli, Chu Xiu breathed a sigh of relief. Compared to the original plot, things had changed a lot. This was because the guy who obtained the inheritance of the demonic Heart Hall in the original plot was not called Zhang Chufan. Moreover, that person had the cultivation of one with heaven and man as soon as he was born, instead of just at the three-flower realm. Now, Chu Xiu was sure that it was indeed because of his influence that the inheritance of the demonic Heart Hall was born in advance. If it were not for Chu Xiu's intervention, Prince and Luo residence, Jiang Wenyuan would not have died so early. Now, Zhang Chufan would definitely still be in the Prince and Luo residence as his guest. As a result, the Prince and Luo residence was now empty. This Zhang Chufan was so lucky that he was able to obtain the inheritance of the demonic Heart Hall. However, this guy was not far from death, because he was too high profile. This Zhang Chufan was only a rogue cultivator. He did not know the taboo and horror of the Kunlun devil cult. Yet, he still dared to announce that he was the direct descendant of the Kunlun devil cult. Even if Chu Xiu did not make a move, he would still be killed if he made a big deal out of it. Chapter 423. It was the same opportunity, but everyone had different choices. From Chu Xiu's point of view, the person who obtained the inheritance of the Demon Heart Hall was the kind of person who didn't have high standards and liked to seek death subconsciously. In the original plot, the person who obtained the inheritance of the Demon Heart Hall could be considered a character. He used his identity to create a storm between the righteous and demonic sections. However, this person seemed to be a little too petty. His strength wasn't that great yet, but he had already started to show off in the pugilistic world. Little did he know that the bird that stuck its head out would be shot. The more arrogant one was in the pugilistic world, the faster one would die. Of course, Chu Xiu might have to thank this guy called Zhang Chufan for being so high profile. If it wasn't for the fact that he started to be so high profile and arrogant when he just had a bit of strength and opportunity, someone with good intentions wouldn't have passed the news to Mei Qinglian. If he was really a low-profile person, he would wait until he cultivated to a certain realm and created a storm in the pugilistic world. By then, Chu Xiu would be in danger. Chu Xiu asked Qi Yuanli, Tower Master Qi, do you know where he is now? Qi Yuanli shrugged and said, he's just a nobody. Wind-sweeping tower naturally wouldn't waste our energy to track him down. However, he should still be in Luoyang County. If you need, I can use the power of wind-sweeping tower to help you search. I'll give you the news within 3 days. To wind-sweeping tower, although Zhang Chufan claimed to be the successor of the Demon Heart Hall, in the eyes of a power like wind-sweeping tower, the Kunlun Devil cult was a taboo. If anyone obtained the inheritance of the Kunlun Devil cult, they definitely wouldn't be able to hide. Why would they jump out and make a big fuss about it? Therefore, regardless of whether it was Qi Yuanli or Anemophilia who collected the information about Zhang Chufan, they really thought that Zhang Chufan was a clown who got carried away after obtaining a bit of opportunity and bragged to attract attention. However, who would have thought that this weirdo really obtained the inheritance of the Kunlun Devil cult? A bright light flashed in Chu Xiu's eyes as he shook his head. There's no need, I will do it myself. Tower Lord Qi, how much is the fee for this information? Qi Yuanli waved his hand and said, it's just an ordinary piece of news from an insignificant person. Something that can be bought with ordinary money isn't worth much. Forget about the fees. Hearing Qi Yuanli's words, Chu Xiu didn't act pretentious. He cupped his hands towards Qi Yuanli and said, in that case, many thanks to Tower Master Qi. It's just a small matter, not worth mentioning. Qi Yuanli waved his hand casually. Wind-sweeping tower was an absolutely neutral organization in Jianghu. They were completely businessmen. As long as you had money, you could buy and sell information from them. With Chu Xiu's potential, Qi Yuanli did not mind forming a good relationship with Chu Xiu. After exiting Wind-sweeping tower, Tangya stood behind Chu Xiu and asked, my lord, should we make our move now? Chu Xiu nodded expressionlessly and said, of course, we can't afford to delay any longer. Immediately tell Ghost Hand King and the others to gather people and prepare to make a move. Immediately enter Leping Prefecture. Leping Prefecture is a prefecture of Eastern Qi. It's not a small area, but it's not small either. If we make a move together, it'll be easy for someone to escape. So, we'll temporarily split up our forces and search around Leping Prefecture. When you find the target, don't inform me. Wait for my order and you can directly make your move. Remember, don't worry about life or death. It's good to be alive, but it's also good to be dead. If Zhang Chuhan was captured alive, Chu Xiu was also prepared to interrogate him about the inheritance of the Demon Heart Hall. It would be best if he could obtain the inheritance from his mouth. Then, even if Chu Xiu was a fake, it would become real. And if it really couldn't be done, then it didn't matter if he died. After all, if he really died, the fake Chu Xiu could also become real. Yan Bugui nodded and habitually prepared to make a move to kill, but was stopped by Tangya. I say, why are you in such a hurry? We haven't asked clearly yet. Tangya complained to Yan Bugui, then turned to Chu Xiu and asked, Your Excellency, this Leping Prefecture is not our territory. What if we have a conflict with the local martial arts forces when we make a move? Chu Xiu's face revealed a trace of coldness and said seriously, I must take Zhang Chufan's life. I'll kill whoever gets in my way. There are no top martial arts forces in Jianghu in Leping Prefecture. If something happens, I can handle it. Hearing Chu Xiu's words, Tangya immediately understood. After giving some instructions, he directly turned around and left with Yan Bugui. Tangya liked the decisive character of Chu Xiu. Since he was ready to kill, then he should do it openly and happily. It was too unpleasant to have scruples about this and that. It was satisfying to work with such a superior. At least Tangyo was very satisfied. In the White Mountain Prefecture of Leping Prefecture, Zhang Chufan was in the main hall of the Lin family in the White Mountain Prefecture. But he was sitting on the main seat of the Lin family's main hall like a guest, with his legs crossed and an arrogant posture. Zhang Chufan was not very old, only in his 30s. His appearance could be regarded as handsome, but at this time the arrogance on his face could not be concealed. In the past in Leping Prefecture, Zhang Chufan was also a figure. After all, he was a rogue cultivator. It was not easy for him to reach the Xiantian realm at such a young age with his own strength. So at that time, Zhang Chufan was qualified to be a right-hand man in Prince Annal's mansion. After all, when Jiang Wenyuan was at his peak, not everyone could be a right-hand man in Prince Annal's mansion. Unfortunately, an accident happened in Prince Annal's mansion. Jiang Wenyuan was killed, and Prince Annal's mansion also fell apart overnight. Zhang Chufan became a stray dog again. But who would have thought that there would always be a way out? He, Zhang Chufan, was indeed a person with great luck. The inheritance of the Demon Heart Hall under the ancient Kunlun demon cult was actually obtained by him. Just as Chu Xiu had guessed, after Zhang Chufan had obtained the Demon Heart Hall's legacy, he had no idea what it meant given his insight and knowledge. Zhang Chufan only knew that the Kunlun devil cult used to sweep the whole Jianghu and was very strong. So he subconsciously thought that the identity of the successor of the Devil Heart Hall was very valuable, and he became a person with a backer. At the same time that he had a backer, Zhang Chufan began to publicize this matter with great fanfare. He really thought that his identity was great. In the eyes of other big sects, Zhang Chufan was just a clown. Except for a few people, no one would believe that he had the so-called cultivation method. However, in Leping Prefecture, Zhang Chufan's reputation and strength were still very useful. During this period of time, Zhang Chufan had been swaggering around Leping Commandery. He took in some of his former friends as his subordinates, and then went to seek revenge on the people and forces who had enmity with him in the past. It could be said that he was very carefree and unrestrained. However, those forces did not know whether it was because they really thought that Zhang Chufan was the successor of the Kunlun devil cult, or simply did not want to completely fall out with Zhang Chufan, so they endured it, just like the Lin family now. At this time, the master of the Lin family was standing in the hall with a humiliated face. He snorted coldly and said, "Zhang Chufan, I have given you what you want. What do you want now?" The Lin family was a big family in the whole White Mountain Prefecture, but in fact, it was not ranked in the whole Leping Prefecture. The master of the Lin family only had the strength of the inner gang realm. The master of the Lin family did not know what other people thought. He only knew that his family completely could not defeat Zhang Chufan, so they admitted defeat. Otherwise, how could he let Zhang Chufan be so arrogant? At this time, hearing the words of the master of the Lin family, Zhang Chufan suddenly sneered and said, "What do I want? I just want to take back all the things that I lost in the past." In the past, in your Lin family's marriage contest, I was obviously the winner, but because I was only a rogue cultivator, not an aristocratic family, you broke your promise. Not only did you not marry your daughter to me, but you also did not even give me the prize of the winner. You only gave me a few meat-steamed buns to send me away. Do you really think that I am a beggar? Now that your precious daughter has long been married to an old man, she is already old and yellow. I don't want her even if you give her to me for free. Now I just want 10 times the reward that you prepared as a dowry. Is that too much? Doesn't your Lin family still have 1,000 leaves violet orchid? Take it to me as interest, is that too much? Zhang Chufan's words almost made the master of the Lin family faint. If Zhang Chufan wanted some compensation, the Lin family could still afford it. But Zhang Chufan opened his mouth and asked for 10 times the previous dowry. He even wanted the 1,000 leaves violet orchid that the Lin family had secretly cultivated with great difficulty and could increase a cultivator's lifespan. This was simply preparing to take the life of the Lin family. Seeing that the master of the Lin family still wanted to say something, Zhang Chufan's face immediately darkened and said, I do not want to say the same thing a second time. These things, are you going to hand over or not? The master of the Lin family gritted his teeth and said, hand over. People under eaves had no choice but to lower their heads. Right now, Zhang Chufan was a vile person, and the master of the Lin family was very helpless. If he did not hand it over, the other party could very well slaughter the Lin family, and he would also have a good excuse. Of course, if Chu Xiu was here, he would definitely also disdain Zhang Chufan's vile appearance. There was not so much trouble in dealing with an old enemy. Either he did not do it, or he did it to the extreme. If it was Chu Xiu, he would either not make a move against the Lin family, or he would make a move against the Lin family. In the face of absolute strength, it would be best to directly slaughter the Lin family, lest there would be people who would hate him. If he killed all his enemies, then there would be no more enemies. But this time, Zhang Chufan did not seem to be here for revenge, but to be here to show off. After all, it was better to not return to one's hometown when one was rich. Chapter 424. Looking at the sullen face of the Lin family patriarch, who dared to be angry but did not dare to speak, Zhang Chufan's heart was filled with joy. Ever since he stood out among the group of rogue cultivators when he was young and successfully joined Prince Enli's residence as a guardian, Zhang Chufan knew that he was not an ordinary person. He was different from those guys who could only roll around at the bottom of Jianghu for their entire lives. Sooner or later, he would make a name for himself. Now, this opportunity had come. He, Zhang Chufan, was really a person blessed with great luck. Just as Chu Xiu had guessed, with Zhang Chufan's background, he had only heard some legends about the Kunlun devil cult. He did not know the details of the war in the past or the various taboos of the Kunlun devil cult. Therefore, until now, Zhang Chufan still thought that he had become the successor of the Kunlun devil cult. He was like the protagonist of some Jianghu legends, who accidentally jumped off a cliff and obtained a godly inheritance. From then on, his women would take the initiative to throw themselves at him, and he would become the future supreme master of Jianghu. This inflated mentality made Zhang Chufan feel a little smug. Therefore, during this period of time, he had been flaunting his strength in Lepian commandery and waiting for the arrival of the evil Pole sect. Shi Yuanli's information stated that he was in contact with the evil Pole sect, but in fact, he was not the one who took the initiative to contact the evil Pole sect. Instead, it was the evil Pole sect who took the initiative to contact him, preparing to accept him into the evil Pole sect. Zhang Chufan thought that it was his identity that caused the evil Pole sect to treat him as a young master and train him with all their might. After all, in the legends of Jianghu, the Kunlun devil cult used to dominate the world. Sects like the evil Pole sect used to be consumed by the Kunlun devil cult. However, Zhang Chufan did not know that in the war that destroyed the Kunlun devil cult, the evil Pole sect had become a traitor. Moreover, the evil Pole sect had Wuxia Xianxia, a genius who successfully cultivated the Blood Flood Dragon Heart Sutra as a human. Not to mention that Zhang Chufan was only a successor of the Demon Heart Hall. Even if he was the successor of Dugu Weiwei, it would still be useless. However, right at this moment, a commotion broke out from outside. More than 10 martial artists had barged into the Lin family. Their strength was so strong that the Lin family couldn't defend against them at all. The young warrior in the lead carried a heavy sword on his back. His expression was cold, and there seemed to be no focus in his eyes. However, his three-flower realm strength was unusually solid, giving Zhang Chufan a heavy pressure. This young martial artist was Yan Bugue. Chu Xiu and his subordinates divided into several groups, and began to search and kill around Lepian County. Yan Bugue's luck wasn't bad. Zhang Chufan's Lin family was located in the direction he was searching. Zhang Chufan didn't try to conceal his whereabouts, so Yan Bugue was able to find out Zhang Chufan's location very quickly. Lepian County was not considered a major county in eastern Qi, so the strength of a county was limited. Those in the three-flower realm were already considered experts in Lepian County. Otherwise, Zhang Chufan would not have been able to act so arrogantly for so long. However, Zhang Chufan had never seen or even heard of this person before. Zhang Chufan couldn't help but frown. Who are you? Are you here to cause trouble for the Lin family? When Yan Bugui appeared with his men, Zhang Chufan subconsciously thought that they were here to cause trouble for the Lin family and not for him. At that moment, Yan Bugui looked at Zhang Chufan expressionlessly and said, "Are you Zhang Chufan?" Zhang Chufan nodded subconsciously and said, "Yes, I am." "Are you here for me?" However, before Zhang Chufan could react, Yan Bugui had already grabbed the hilt of the heavy sword on Zhang Chufan's back. In an instant, a violent gust of earth energy whistled over. The power of the sword was as terrifying as Mount Tai, pressuring Zhang Chufan to the point that he couldn't breathe. At this critical moment, Zhang Chufan let out a furious roar. His hands danced in the air, and the sinister and cold devil chi condensed into countless threads, like the strings of a zither. As his hands moved, the pitch-black devil chi instantly roared out, shaking Yan Bugui's sword. Although it had successfully reduced the power of Yan Bugui's sword by more than half, Zhang Chufan himself was forced back several steps by the force of the sword, and a trace of blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth. Although the inheritance of skills was important, the martial artist himself was more important. Otherwise, even if a good-for-nothing had a divine skill, he wouldn't be able to practice it. Zhang Chufan was in the inner aura realm before. With the help of some treasures in the Demon Heart Hall, his strength quickly soared to the Three-Flower Realm, which was equivalent to directly crossing a realm. This caused his foundation to be unstable, and he couldn't compare to Yan Bugui at all. Even if he had the secret skills of the Kunlun Devil cult, he couldn't withstand more than a few moves from Yan Bugui. Looking at Yan Bugui in front of him, Zhang Chufan seemed to still be in a state of confusion. He shouted, "Who are you? Why are you attacking me?" However, Yan Bugui didn't answer him. Instead, he followed up with another powerful slash. The power was majestic, and it was incomparably strong. It was directly aimed at Zhang Chufan's life. Chu Xiu's request was for Zhang Chufan to be alive. Of course, a dead body was fine as well. However, he ignored the first half of Yan Bugui's words. He only knew that killing was enough. Therefore, Yan Bugui attacked with a killing move, not giving Zhang Chufan a chance to speak at all. Seeing that Yan Bugui's sword was coming for him again, Zhang Chufan shouted, "Run!" In fact, before he was ready to run, his subordinates were already so scared that their legs turned to jelly, and they were ready to retreat first. Zhang Chufan used to be a loner. It wasn't until he obtained an opportunity that he recruited his old gang of scoundrels to be his subordinates. It was fine for these people to follow behind him like a fox using the tiger's power, but to go through thick and thin with him, it was better off. Zhang Chufan's hands formed a seal, and suddenly, a turbulent demonic aura erupted. However, it was directly cut into pieces by Yan Bugui's sword. However, at this moment, an ear-piercing roar suddenly sounded in Yan Bugui's ears, causing his body to pause for a moment, and the huge sword in his hand was directly slashed to the side. By the time Yan Bugui returned to normal, Zhang Chufan and the others had already escaped from the back door. Yan Bugui rubbed his head, and his eyes revealed a hint of coldness as he said, "Chase." On a small hill outside of the White Mountain Prefecture, Zhang Chufan's face was filled with fear. It was obvious that the two sword strikes from Yan Bugui had given him a huge psychological trauma. This also caused Zhang Chufan's arrogant heart to be splashed with a bucket of cold water after he obtained the inheritance. This also allowed him to know the extent of his strength. "Have you guys heard of who that guy is? Why does he want to kill me?" Zhang Chufan asked his subordinates. His subordinates shook their heads, and one of them said, "This person's strength is so valiant, and that heavy sword is even more conspicuous. If he is from Leping Prefecture, there is no reason for us not to know him. He should be from some other place. Could it be that he was hired by someone to deal with Big Brother Zhang?" Zhang Chufan thought for a moment. During this period of time in Leping Prefecture, he seemed to have really offended a lot of people, and some of them were quite serious. These people seemed to have a reason to hire someone to kill him. For a moment, Zhang Chufan really couldn't think of who it was that wanted to kill him. Zhang Chufan clenched his fist and said fiercely, "Don't let me know who this person is, or else I will wring his head." "Big brother Zhang, what should we do now?" someone asked. Zhang Chufan thought for a moment and said, "Let's change direction, cover up our tracks, and go to Kaiping Prefecture to find our brothers. If that guy with the heavy sword dares to come again, I will make sure that he won't be able to return." Although Zhang Chufan was a despicable person who was intoxicated by success, he was really good to his former friends. Now that he had made a fortune, those friends who followed him in the past had naturally followed suit, showing off their strength in Leping Prefecture. Kaiping Prefecture was Zhang Chufan's hometown. His subordinates, as well as all kinds of property and resources he had extorted during this period, were also stored in Kaiping Prefecture. All the way to Kaiping Prefecture with his people, Zhang Chufan felt a little strange. He had hundreds of subordinates in Kaiping Prefecture, but now there was no one in the prefecture's mansion. Moreover, when the other warriors in Kaiping Prefecture saw Zhang Chufan, they all had a strange look on their faces. When they saw him, it was as if they had seen some kind of plague, and they all avoided him. Zhang Chufan frowned all the way to his home. It was his mansion, which used to belong to the Wang family of Kaiping Prefecture, but he was also bullied by the Wang family when he was a child. At this time, he forced the Wang family to hand over their family property and mansion, and even directly drove the Wang family out of Kaiping Prefecture. As soon as he came to the door, Zhang Chufan felt that something was wrong, but he still subconsciously opened the door. In an instant, the pungent smell of blood hit his nose. In the courtyard, all his subordinates had been killed, and the corpses were neatly arranged in the shape of a mouth, and the whole courtyard had been dyed red with blood. More than a dozen warriors in black stood next to it, and in the center was a young man in a golden robe with a gentle smile on his face. He was still playing with a delicate dragon tail soul-chasing dart in his hand. When he saw Zhang Chufan, he greeted him, "You're back." Tang Ye's tone was very gentle, as if he was an old friend who had not seen him for a long time and was greeting him. But coupled with the current scene, it made Zhang Chufan feel a chill from the bottom of his heart. Tang Ye was much smarter than Yan Bugue. He was not like Yan Bugue, who only sent people to search honestly. Tang Ye directly inquired about the location of Zhang Chufan's lair, and then brought people to slaughter Zhang Chufan's lair, and then waited here. Although he was waiting for a rabbit to come to him, but the chance of waiting was still very high, and now it seemed that it was really so. Of course, Tang Ye's action, in the eyes of his subordinates, was purely because their master was slacking off, and was too lazy to run back and forth looking for people. Tang Ye and his men had slaughtered hundreds of people in a row. In broad daylight, it was impossible for the people in Kaiping Prefecture not to notice, but they did not even send a message to Zhang Chufan. One could imagine how bad Zhang Chufan's reputation in his hometown was. Of course, it was also possible that these people were frightened by Tang Ye's methods, and did not dare to send a message. Chapter 425. Looking at his subordinates being slaughtered, Zhang Chufan's heart was filled with anger, fear, and many other emotions. But what Zhang Chufan wanted to know the most was who these people were, and why there were people chasing after him everywhere. "Who the hell sent you? Why do you want to kill me?" Zhang Chufan shouted at Tang Ye. Tang Ye shook his head and said, "It's rare for a person to be muddle-headed. Why do you need to know so much? Why don't we make a deal? You obediently surrender, I won't kill the people around you, and I can let you suffer less. What do you think?" He was different from Yan Bugue's simple and crude stubbornness. Although Tang Ye seemed to be more lazy on normal days, as long as Chu Xiu gave him a task, he would be able to complete it perfectly. For example, this time, although Chu Xiu said it didn't matter if Zhang Chufan was dead or alive, but he said it was better to live, so Tang Ye was prepared to capture him alive and complete the task perfectly. Zhang Chufan gritted his teeth, and his figure quickly fled outside. Seeing this scene, Tang Ye shook his head and said, "What a pity, it seems that you have made a wrong choice." As his voice fell, Countless hidden weapons in Tang Ye's hands attacked Zhang Chufan like a torrential rain, but under the control of Tang Ye's gang Qi, these hidden weapons did not aim at Zhang Chufan's vital parts. After all, he was prepared to capture him alive. Zhang Chufan did not need to turn his head to feel the terror of the overwhelming hidden weapons behind him. He formed a seal with his hands, and in an instant, boundless devil Qi shrouded behind him, only to hear a series of explosions. No matter how much devil Qi he had, his strength was not as strong as Tang Ye, and was still shattered. The two curved blades in Tang Ye's hands combined into one, like a full moon, and suddenly shot out, surrounded by gang Qi, looking extremely terrifying. The whistling wind came, Zhang Chufan gritted his teeth, he suddenly moved, and several palms fell, but he did not attack Tang Ye, but the people around him. Zhang Chufan's subordinates did not expect that Zhang Chufan would suddenly attack them. After all, Zhang Chufan had always been good to them. In a moment of carelessness, the few of them were pushed back and were directly cut into two by Tang Ye's full moon chakram. There was no fluctuation in Zhang Chufan's eyes. He was a selfish person. At this critical moment, he couldn't care less about his brothers and subordinates. Of course, his life was more important. Seeing this scene, Tang Ye couldn't help but shake his head and say, "TSK, you betrayed your own people. You're really quick, like someone from the demonic path. But unfortunately, your resistance is futile." As soon as he finished speaking, Tang Ye's figure became like a willow catkin as he moved against the wind. His figure was light, but his speed was fast to the extreme. He had almost caught up to Zhang Chufan in an instant. Zhang Chufan was also shocked by Tang Ye's series of changes. At this time, he couldn't care about anything else. He directly formed a seal with both hands, and in an instant, a force of qi and blood mixed with devil qi burned in his body. His speed instantly rose to the extreme. His figure was like a blood-red rainbow, and he disappeared in an instant. Tang Ye's figure stopped in place, and a look of shock appeared on his face. He was best at speed, so he was only prepared to capture Zhang Chufan alive. He didn't even consider that Zhang Chufan would escape. He didn't expect that he would miscalculate this time. Zhang Chufan actually had such a trump card, which was somewhat beyond Tang Ye's expectations. However, Tang Ye didn't care. At first glance, this kind of cultivation method needed to burn qi and blood or pay a certain price to be used. After using it, Zhang Chufan would definitely be seriously injured. An official Chu had already set up an inescapable net in the entire Leping prefecture, constantly strangling people. Zhang Chufan couldn't escape. At this time, Zhang Chufan had already appeared more than 10 miles away. At this time, his appearance was extremely miserable. His face was pale, and blood was flowing from his mouth and nose. Obviously, he was seriously injured. He had obtained a lot of cultivation techniques from the Devil Path inheritance, but Zhang Chufan was still relatively cautious at that time. The first thing he learned was internal strength, and the second was the blood escape technique. The effect of using it to escape was very outstanding. Of course, the consumption was not ordinary. The blood escape technique used the power of qi and blood as fuel. The further one escaped, the greater the loss of one's own qi and blood. Zhang Chufan was frightened by Tang Ye, so he directly fled more than 10 miles away before stopping the blood escape technique, but at this time, he was seriously injured. Taking out a few medicinal pills and throwing them into his mouth to refine, Zhang Chufan's complexion slightly improved. These medicinal pills were also found in the demonic inheritance, and they were all high-quality products with wonderful effects. However, at this time, Zhang Chufan was also thinking about who was trying to kill him. He was not an idiot. Naturally, he could see that the heavy sword user and the concealed weapon user were basically a group of people, and they were all targeting him. Previously, Zhang Chufan thought that these people had offended some force and were hired by them to kill him, but then Zhang Chufan felt that something was wrong. Because the forces he had offended were definitely not as strong as him, and under Zhang Chufan's coercion, they had already submitted. If this group of people had such strong power and could hire such a terrifying opponent, then he would not have been able to deal with them in the past. Thinking about it, Zhang Chufan did not understand what was going on, but at this time, the most important thing for him to think about was how to escape. Now there were two groups of people chasing him, and he was seriously injured, so Zhang Chufan must find a safer place. After thinking for a long time, Zhang Chufan decided to go to the center of Leping Commandery, Antai Prefecture, to seek shelter from the Yang family of Antai Prefecture. The Yang family of Antai Prefecture was the largest family in Antai Prefecture, and there was more than one martial artist at the unity of heaven and man realm in the family. Zhang Chufan had no grievances with the Yang family before, so this time, even if he obtained the opportunity, he did not dare to offend the Yang family. Moreover, he was just a little arrogant, not an idiot. The Yang family had a martial artist at the unity of heaven and man realm, and he would be courting death if he offended the Yang family. The most important thing was that the evil extreme sect had contacted him, asking him to join the evil extreme sect, and one of the messengers was the Yang family. It was said that although the Yang family was not a demonic path, one of their disciples had become an inner sect disciple of the evil extreme sect, and it was because of this relationship that the Yang family would send messages for the evil extreme sect. From Zhang Chufan's point of view, he was already prepared to join the extreme evil sect. The Yang clan would naturally give him face. Moreover, with the Yang clan's strength, they had so many unity of heaven and man realm martial artists. They could protect him. After making up his mind, Zhang Chufan immediately began to cover his traces, and fled in the direction of Antai Prefecture. Thanks to Zhang Chufan's high-profile actions in Lu and Prefecture, there were many people in the prefecture who knew him. Chu Xiu's subordinates were divided into more than 10 groups, and almost half of them had found his traces and began to hunt him down. However, Zhang Chufan was still quite skilled. For example, the Wolf King, the Fire Slave, and the others had also found his traces, but he had used various methods to avoid them. Of course, this was mainly due to the inheritance that Zhang Chufan had obtained. It was the inheritance left behind by a hall master of the Kunlun devil cult, and there were many strange things in it, as well as some external objects and trump cards. Otherwise, Zhang Chufan would not have survived until he reached Antai Prefecture. In a small town about 5 kilometers away from Antai Prefecture, Zhang Chufan wore a black bandana and mask on his face, but underneath it, his face was frighteningly pale. Seeing that he was about to reach Antai Prefecture, Zhang Chufan let out a sigh of relief. Zhang Chufan had not had a good rest for the past few days, and now that he was about to reach Antai Prefecture, Zhang Chufan naturally could not slack off. He only planned to buy some dry rations to fill his stomach, and then immediately set off. For Zhang Chufan, this pursuit was not without its benefits. Although Zhang Chufan was a loose cultivator, his experience was relatively smooth. When he was young, he displayed talent that far surpassed that of a loose cultivator of the same age. Although he could not compare to those cultivators from large sects and aristocratic families, he was still successfully selected to become a guest of Prince Anil Palace. Later, when Prince Anil Palace was destroyed, he fled in a panic, but accidentally obtained the inheritance of the Kunlun devil cult's demon heart hall. As long as he did not seek death, he would have a place in Jianghu in the future. But in the end, he was still a nobody, and his vision was limited. So, as soon as he obtained this little bit of success, he began to become arrogant. He even dared to publicly proclaim that he was the successor of the Kunlun devil cult, and did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. And this series of pursuits had poured a few buckets of cold water over Zhang Chufan's head, finally waking him up. He now knew exactly how strong he was, and what it meant by, "There is always someone better than you out there." Zhang Chufan even swore to himself that once he arrived at Antai Prefecture, obtained the protection of the Yang family, and joined the evil Pole sect, he would definitely keep a low profile for a period of time. He would concentrate on digesting the inheritance he had obtained before coming out of seclusion. In the future, he would not be so ostentatious, and would have to be as careful as if he was walking on thin ice. With this thought in mind, Zhang Chufan walked up to the only stall on the street that sold steamed buns, and said in a hoarse voice, "Give me 10 steamed buns." The young stall seller smiled and said, "Sir, do you want element steamed bun or meat steamed bun?" Zhang Chufan said in a low voice, "Meat." The stall seller quickly picked up 10 meat-steamed buns for Zhang Chufan, wrapped them in toilet paper, and handed them over. Zhang Chufan directly threw out a silver fragment and said, "Take the rest as a tip, keep the change." The stall seller hurriedly smiled and said, "Thank you, young master." Zhang Chufan subconsciously picked up the meat-steamed bun, preparing to eat it as he hurried along, but then he felt that something was wrong. After being chased for so many days, Zhang Chufan had developed a somewhat suspicious and cautious personality. This steamed bun vendor was only selling one steamed bun for 3 copper coins. She could buy all of the steamed buns in his stall with a single piece of silver. However, this guy didn't seem to care at all after receiving the silver and casually threw it into the box. Instead, he was paying attention to her all this time. Zhang Chufan's expression changed slightly, and he involuntarily put down the meat-steamed bun that was about to enter his mouth. Meanwhile, the smile on the stall seller's face gradually disappeared, and his expression became strange. "Young Master Zhang, why aren't you eating? Is my meat-steamed bun not good enough?" You're tuning into the Carefree Valley YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.